You're in the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio. And now, here's Gene Steinberg.
Well, I guess on this episode of the Paracast, we probably will not discuss the bloody Roswell slides, or maybe a little bit. But the one thing I do want to mention is that it seems like one of the first times in UFO history, at least in recent years, where people of different persuasions got together to explore that thing, being the Roswell Slides Research Group, where you had out-and-out skeptics, debunkers like Lance Moody, and people who were in middle of the road and people who you'd consider believers, all getting together, all pitting their resources and coming out with a useful result. And is this possibly, Chris O'Brien, a way to make some progress in this toxic field?
I suppose. I mean, stranger things have happened. Sometimes these controversies do create strange bedfellows, as they would say. But I think it'll be back to business as usual, and we'll see the usual sniping and conflicts between opposing camps here. But I guess it's a good thing when people come together to, at least drill down on the truth and try to get the real story, as in the case of this latest fiasco. I'm just so tired of of hearing about it. The revelation by, I think, some journalist in Mexico that they had over 2.5 million people sign up for the streaming. I have a hard time believing that figure, but if it's true, and if they did have between 6,500 and 7,000 people at the live event, you're talking in the neighborhood of $40-50 million. And if that's the case, criminal charges should be filed. Let's put it that way. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if there's any way to really ascertain or to have them reveal the number of live streaming clients, but it just boggles my mind that they could, be so cavalier and get away with it. We haven't heard a word from this Adam Dew character, which I think we need to get some sort of statement from him. Tom Carey is still sticking to his guns, but I think by and large, this was a big learning lesson, I think, for everyone, that you can't accept anything at face value.
The one thing about Carey is he did issue an apology. But then there was a report that he only did that apology, on advice of his lawyer or something?
Oh, I didn't hear that.
Well, I know the apology was run in our forums and it was published. And it seemed to be the kind of apology you'd expect, that he understands this was the mummified remains of a 2-year-old boy. We understand that. Now, I just was running my calculator on my iPhone as I was talking to you. And the pay-per-view, the streaming, it was either $15 if you got it early or $20 if you ordered it, I guess, on the day of. I forget the conditions. But let's just say the average price was $15. If 1 million people watched it, that's $15 million. Okay?
Right.
1 million. Now, you add that to the gate receipts. 6,500, 7,000 people paying from $20 to $85 as translated in Mexican pesos. And as you say, it is a multi-million-dollar affair. Now, I asked a lawyer about this, whether there's some criminal possibilities here, whether you could sue. And he said, the main issue here is, did the people who participated, and not just Jaime Maussan, Adam Dew, Tom Carey, Don Schmidt, were they aware that this was a hoax or was fake, that it wasn't what they thought it was going in? You can't prove fraud based on being mistaken, I don't think. But if they knew it was a fraud going into it, then maybe there's something there. But doing it in Mexico creates other complications. Number one, if you want to sue them, you have to go to Mexico. You can't sue them, in Washington, D.C. Maybe that's one thing there. By putting it in Mexico, it made it difficult or impossible for people in the U.S. and other parts of the world to go after them if the thing came falling apart. But the other question I have is, what were they thinking? And the reason I ask this is they had to know, or at least one or two of the people involved had to know, that once high-resolution slides got out, it would be a matter of hours or days before it was exposed. How could they not know that?
Well, I don't know. It just really is another nail in the coffin as far as I'm concerned. You know, some people have been saying that this may even taint the Roswell case to the point where it's all the major work that's gone down the last 30 years is going to go down the drain. I don't think that's the case. I think Roswell will always be Roswell. Some people have said that between the alien autopsy fiasco in the mid-90s and this particular saga, that between the two hoaxes, if you want to go that route, that they may have tainted the case forever. I don't really think so. I think it's tainted the field of ufology, and there's got to be some sort of litmus test for these types of events and claims. There's got to be a way that we can nip these types of scenarios at the bud before they even begin. I'm scratching my head trying to figure out a way to do that, but it just makes me more and more reluctant to be associated with the field of ufology. And I just, I'm just so, so down on, so much that goes on in this field. And we sound like broken records, I know, about this, but it's just really sad that a lot of people who are hardworking, honest, are really attempting to do the work in a proper fashion, are being overshadowed by P.T. Barnum scenarios like this. And it's like a salmon struggling upstream. It's very difficult to make any headway with the scientific community, with the fence sitters and the naysayers and the people that just ignore the whole field because of toxic events like this. And it just, there's just no way that we're going to gain any kind of respectability and any kind of quality attention, I think, from academia and the scientific community if things like this continue. It's just, it does so much more harm than good. It does, maybe certain people's pockets, it does them good, but everybody else is just kind of left, twisting in the wind. And that's really sad. It makes me more and more reluctant and reticent to get involved in this field publicly, more so than I am. I chastise people when they say, you call me a ufologist or introduce me as a ufologist. It's just an embarrassing term to me now.
I'm hoping here that maybe the people who work with the Roswell Slides Research Group will follow my suggestion and create a UFO truth squad and go out there and, when necessary, disassemble the fakes, or at least check things out that are questionable or things out that might have potential, and do a little research so we don't end up with something like this. Take it seriously. And the other thing is, this thing should have been open sourced from the day one. As soon as we had the NDAs and all that, we knew something had to be wrong. What isn't wrong is that we have a second radio show we do called After the Paracast, available exclusively to subscribers of the Paracast Plus. Real simple to get it. You subscribe at plus.theparacast.com, plus.theparacast.com. Simple sign up, not expensive, $5 a month. They're annual and 5-year programs. We send you a copy of Chris O'Brien's Stalking the Tricksters ebook version if you subscribe for a year or more. Coming up on this week's episode of the Paracast, we have the one, the only Mr. UFO, Tim Beckley. And I've known Tim probably longer than I've known almost everyone or anyone other than the late Jim Moseley. So there we go. Tim Beckley coming next. You're in
the Paracast.
Hi, my name is Scott Fuchs, teacher and rowing coach for over 14 years. I was sluggish, overweight, on prescription drugs, and only 30-something. Fortunately, I was referred to Dr. Z, and happy to say Dr. Z's all-natural protocols over a consistent course resolved my health issues. I'm in the best shape of my life, and most importantly, on 0 medications.
I'm Dr. Zdanowski, author of Evology, Trained as a primary care physician, surgical manipulation under anesthesia, expert in nutrition, diet, weight loss, immune system, and I specialize in chiropractic. My 15 years of professional experience has taught me the 4 keys to vibrant health: a balanced musculoskeletal system, an integrated nervous system, a flowing lymphatic system, and a body filled with over 90 essential nutrients. This has been a secret too long. Actualize your potential, reverse disease. Call me, Dr. Z. 201-945-1177, 201-945-1177, evolveyourself.com.
Hi, John Hubner from Midas Resources. Are you tired of watching your hard-earned assets dwindle away? As government spending is out of hand and the Federal Reserve is creating in excess of $20 billion a week, are you tired of stockbrokers gambling away your hard-earned money? Is this market a setup for a crash greater than 1987? Too many of today's policies resemble those that led to the collapse of 1929. This is John Hubner, and that was me in 2007. And we all know what happened when the subprime credit bubble burst. By March 2009, the dollar lost 50% of its value. The entire U.S. banking system was on the verge of collapsing. Like all financial problems of the past, is history about to repeat itself? Call me, John Hubner, at 1-800-686-2237, extension 129, before it's too late to protect yourself. Will the oncoming catastrophe take all private IRAs, 401ks with it? There is a way to protect your hard-earned assets. Call me, John Hubner, at 1-800-686-2237, extension 129.
Hi, Coast to Coast listeners. I'm Kay Zwirling from KSCO Radio in Santa Cruz. I'm 93 years old, and I'm a big fan of George Norrie because his topics and guests are fascinating and really get you thinking. George is just as bothered as I am by all the advertising you hear for toxic prescription drugs that make you sicker, not healthy. I prefer to give my body all 90 essential nutrients it needs for life to prevent disease, not compound it. My favorite complete supplement is Beyond Tangy Tangerine from Longevity, which I take every day along with EFA Plus and Beyond OsteoFX, which together are called the Healthy Start Pack. I recommend you go online to criticalhealthnews.com to purchase these products. That's criticalhealthnews.com or call 855-949-RADIO.
The Genesis Communications Network is one of America's premier broadcasters of captivating talk radio. We thank you for listening. Now, just imagine, there are thousands of people who are just as passionate about radio as you are. But what you may not realize is how easy and affordable it is to advertise with us. Radio commercials for your business could be heard on hundreds of radio stations across the U.S. every day. We can help you by creating an effective radio advertising campaign for your company. From script writing to producing your commercial, just like the one you're listening to right now. No other network provides the level of customer service we do. When it comes to radio advertising, we are your one-stop shop. And no matter how big or small your business is, we can help. Email us at advertise@gcnlive.com, and an experienced advertising executive will help you take the first step towards driving more customers to your business or website. Advertise@gcnlive.com. Easy, affordable, effective.
We'd like to hear from you. If you have a comment or question about the Paracast, send it to news@theparacast.com. That's news@theparacast.com. And don't forget to visit our famous Paracast community forums at forum.theparacast.com.
You know, I can't tell you how many years I've known Tim Beckley. We got together when we were teenagers as friends, not friends. We had a lot of fun. I've known him now probably for 52 years.
Wow.
That's almost as long as Chris O'Brien has been alive.
Yeah, it makes me feel like a whippersnapper.
Well, we're going to snap that whip, Chris, so you watch out. How did we meet, Tim?
Jesus, you expect me to remember that, Gene? Well, probably at one of Jim Mosley's UFO meetings, I would imagine. He had them every a couple of weeks at one of those seedy Times Square hotels where you could rent a banquet room in those days for $25. And I'm sure I saw Gray Barker, Ivan T. Sanderson. Admission in those days, I think, was 50 cents. But if you knew Jim, I mean, you could even get by then, and without paying the 75 cents. We probably met then. And then, of course, we exchanged newsletters. We exchanged zines. You had, was it UFO Report or something?
UFO Reporter, right. This was before I sold off my few subscribers to Jim Moseley at Saucer News.
I did the same thing. I had the Interplanetary News Service Report, and I had 1,500 subscribers. I had as many subscribers as APRO had members, actually. You know, in those days, of course, there was no quick copy places. You had to pretty much print and collate and staple yourself. I had a Gestetner mimeograph machine. Everybody else had a Sears and Roebuck machine that went for $100 or so. Mine was a little bit more expensive. And in fact, Jerry Clark cut the stencils for the first couple of issues of the newsletter, although I don't guess he would probably want to admit that today. But be that as it may, we exchanged magazines for quite a while. I think we put out about maybe 15 issues before Jim took it over, and maybe you put out that many or even more. Yours, I think, was a little bit more polished than mine. Wasn't yours offset?
Well, I met somebody at a science fiction convention. I forget his name, except he later became famous for sponsoring Star Trek conventions. Mm-hmm. At that time, he was a printer, and he did me a favor, as a result of which I got the printing done for far lower than I'd pay otherwise. Otherwise, I wouldn't have done it. And I did have the mimeograph machine. I do not remember what brand it was. It was something sold in a mail order catalog.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And I don't remember what it was, what happened to it, or anything else. But cutting stencils was absolutely, totally a chore. And the reason it was a chore is because you had to, I guess there were ways to correct mistakes on it.
Yes. Uh-huh.
But you had to basically type on this crazy sheet, and that sheet was used for mimeographing.
Right. And
you couldn't have fancy graphics or anything.
Well, you know, they did get to the point, actually, where they had electronic stencils, where for $7 you could get at least the newspaper clipping, reproduced fairly well. And, of course, it was messy. My mother threw me out of the house. If it were a crime scene, my fingerprints would have been all over the wall. You know, it was very messy. So I was vanquished to the back porch, where, of course, in the wintertime it was freezing because there was no heat. But we managed to get the word out, just as we continue to do today.
That was very interesting, though, the things we had to do to be a publisher. Now, in Jim's case, he did what I later did, which he took a typewriter. He bought this electric typewriter for Saucer News. And he typed everything twice because he had to have justified columns that line up on both sides.
Right.
And you think that's nothing in traditional printing or desktop publishing. But remember, this was before we had word processing. And even then, Jim, for the rest of his life, always bought the same kinds of typewriters. Smith Corona. He never even bought an IBM Selectric, and he never bought a personal computer.
That is true. And I don't believe he had an answering machine.
That's correct.
And nor a tape recorder.
There is an interesting story about that. Okay? Now, we all remember one of the pioneer early UFO groups was NICAP, National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena. This is the one that was headed by Major Kehoe. Now, his office manager in the 60s was Richard Hall, who became fairly prominent in the UFO field. But he was kind of a prickly sort. And so, on this one occasion, Jim Moseley calls him up, trying to be nice. And Hall says to Jim, "Are you taping this?" And Jim says, "I don't even own a tape recorder." "No, I'm not." And then the words became more incensed, and some of those words became ones that we cannot use on family radio, prohibited by our network. And therefore, soon they hung up the phone on each other. They couldn't stand each other. And that formed this, what do we call it? This dispute between them, this feud. And that feud became so bad that one time I went to NICAP headquarters after having a very pleasant conversation with Donald Kehoe at his home in Luray, Virginia. I went to Washington, D.C., to the headquarters of NICAP with people you've heard on the show, Alan Greenfield, Rick Hilberg, some others. And as soon as he saw me, knowing I was working with Jim Moseley, he said, "Richard Hall, you're not welcome here." And then we had this movement. You might remember this.
Yes, yes.
Hall must fall. Remember that? Where I don't know who invented that term, whether it was Jim or it was me. Hall must fall. He needs to be drummed out of NICAP because he's hurting the organization's credibility. You can't do that.
The organization had somewhat of a credibility problem to begin with. In fact, if you go back and you check the board of directors, you will find that a lot of the people there had backgrounds, military backgrounds, and especially CIA backgrounds. Now, there are some people who would claim that the organization was actually being managed by the agency. And I think there is something to that. Now, my beliefs have changed somewhat over the years, because back when we were kids, pretty much what was your possible origins for UFOs? I mean, the solutions for this. Of course, the interplanetary disk idea was the most frequently touted as being the origin, the true origin of UFOs. They had to be coming here from some other planet or some other the solar system or some other star system, right?
It's interesting how things have turned around. People start in the UFO field these days, or whatever we call the interest in UFOs, and they go back to spaceships, whereas we young whippersnappers, and we were really young in those years, went the other way and went into 4D explanations and more complicated things like ultra-terrestrials. I mean, it was really different.
Well,
we kept looking for other solutions, but let's get back to NICAP and the military connection. Of course, the key was the fact that the Board of Governors of NICAP had Rear Admiral Roscoe Henry Hillenkotter, who was the first head of the CIA. And that caused a few alarms to go off. More to come. Tim Beckley joining Gene and Chris. You're in
The Paracast.
Independently leading the way for the nation. Compelling talk for every political persuasion. We are GCN.
Is there a secret UFO agenda? Do strange creatures from the darkest corners of the mind roam the earth? Is there evidence for mind control, time travel, or devious government conspiracies? Find out the inside scoop on the latest conspiracies, paranormal activity, and Fortean phenomena when you subscribe to Tim Beckley's Conspiracy Journal. It's jam-packed with stories, special book and DVD promotions, and the best news, it's absolutely free, sent right to your mailbox. Plus, a bonus free email newsletter sent out every Friday. Simply send an email with your name and address to Mr. UFO at webtv.net. That's Mr. UFO at webtv.net. Find out what they don't want you to know.
If the IRS has garnished your paycheck or seized money from your bank account, you need to get professional tax help now. Fast action is required to put a halt to these aggressive IRS collection tactics. You can count on the knowledgeable team of tax professionals at Wall & Associates. With over 30 years of experience, Wall & Associates has settled the tax problems of thousands of taxpayers for a small fraction of what they owed. For a free face-to-face consultation, call 1-800-425-4610 to put a wall between you and the IRS. 1-800-425-4610 or look for us on the web at wallandassociates.net. We solve tax problems. If you hire Wall & Associates today, you'll never have to talk to the IRS again. To stop the levies and seizures today, take action now. Call Wall & Associates at 1-800-425-4610. Wall & Associates, 1-800-425-4610. Based on actual cases, results may vary, not a solicitation for legal services.
The IRS is a private corporation, not a government agency. Income tax is collected by voluntary compliance. To learn to unvolunteer or discontinue volunteering into the IRS, visit escapeharassment.com and immediately implement Strategy 1, The process must be repeated each and every time. Paper, letter, envelope, presentment, etc. Always and forever. Failure equates to acceptance, subsequent resultant contract, and you pay or go to jail by your own consent and agreement contract. Avoid recontracting. Visit escapeharassment.com and implement Strategy 1 immediately. Bar lawyers and accountants won't help you. Why wait? Get Strategy 1 and immediately implement it to divorce the IRS today and forever. That's escapeharassment.com, Strategy 1, to be free from the IRS. Escapeharassment.com.
Are you suffering from EP? The symptoms include fraudulent charges to your credit card. Your subway card says it's empty, but you bought it yesterday. Someone's been in your hotel room, but the desk clerk says they only show you entering the room. These are signs of EP. Electronic pickpocketing. Payment cards, transit cards, even hotel room keys use a radio chip, so you can just wave your card at the register, the turnstile, or your hotel room door. But what's convenient for you is also convenient for thieves, waving scanners to electronically pickpocket you without even touching you. The good news is there's a cure. ID Stronghold has created leather wallets and clutches that have built-in EP protection. Layers of shielding material cleverly concealed in a beautiful leather wallet that stops the symptoms of EP. Go to idstronghold.com now and get the cure. idstronghold.com. Warning, ID Stronghold wallets could lead to feelings of safety and security, comfort in crowds, and euphoria. If you experience these emotions, immediately inform your friends and family about idstronghold.com so they can feel better too.
Hi, this is Bryce Abel. I'm the producer of Dark Skies, the co-author of AD After Disclosure, and you are listening to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio.
When Tim and I get together, folks, we start talking about the past, and we'll get to the future and what's going on, but we're talking about one of the major UFO organizations of the 50s and 60s. They lobbied heavily for congressional hearings on UFOs. National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena, Major Kehoe Director, Richard Hall, the office manager. And I guess in a sense, Kehoe believed, and maybe he was tone deaf, that if he had people in the military and some scientists on the board of directors, they'd be giving the organization more credibility. One of those was Hillenkotter, the first head of the CIA. Now, it happens that Hillenkotter and Kehoe were old friends. They went to Annapolis together, okay? So they were two old soldiers who were close friends. So, yeah, why don't you join the organization? Now, Hillenkotter left after a while. And maybe he felt, he was mixed up in something he shouldn't have been mixed up in. That caused, I guess, some consternation on that part. On the other hand, if you want to believe that NICAP was really some kind of military front, and I suppose you could believe that, and there was reason to think it was possible, wouldn't that be just too obvious?
Well, you would think that, but who knows? Disinformation rears its heads in many different ways, I suppose. But, my thinking on this has always been the government, of course, would rather have you not believe in UFOs. But if you're going to accept any belief system, then you should accept the idea that they're from outer space and not from somewhere much closer to home. And that's why I think, this Roswell crash thing has been pushed on us for so many years, because it's somebody trying to prove a particular point of view. And you can't do that in the UFO, field. You can't decide, well, this is what I want UFOs to be, so they're going to be this. You've got to let it lead the way, not you lead the way. And that, I think, is one of the big downfalls of the field, if you can really call it that, is because everybody is off in their own direction trying to prove their own pet theory. People always ask me, well, what is my opinion about UFOs? And I always say, well, it doesn't matter what my opinion is, Gene. UFOs act independently of my thinking or anybody else's thinking. And that's the root of all the evil here, is that people are trying to prove their pet theory, and you can't do that, because then you could probably logically go out and prove any theory that you possibly want, because there's probably a little bit of fact that would prove almost anything. End of point. That is what I've learned after 50 plus years of being involved in this field, is that you've got to remain open to all ideas. And a lot of people get into this thinking that they are going to find a solution to the UFO mystery, and there isn't a solution. If there is a solution, it's certainly not one singular, simple solution. It's many solutions. It's a mystery, and I think it's been a mystery for thousands of years, and I think it will be a mystery long after you and I have gone on into the heavenly realms.
So I take it by what you say is that the UFOs are not necessarily visitors from other planets. Or maybe that's one of many solutions.
Yeah, if there have been visitors here from other planets, they've perhaps come and gone. They wouldn't be showing up every day over, Tulsa, Oklahoma, or over Bridgeport, Connecticut, or these small little towns and desolate, out-of-the-way places, and contacting people who are probably on the fringe to begin with. Not to say that some of these experiences maybe are not real, but there is no pattern. We're looking, Jacques Vallée and these people are looking for a pattern, but there is no real pattern. I mean, you can throw almost every pattern out the window, because as soon as you think you have a pattern, something else comes along. Remember back, was it in the 1950s, Gene? And Chris, you're there, right?
I am here.
Well, this might be before you were involved in any of this, Chris, but do you remember the straight line theory? What was that called? Do you remember?
Aimé Michel.
Aimé Michel.
UFOs and the straight line mystery.
Yes, but they had they actually even had a name for what it was called. And I can't remember what it was offhand, but that was big for a long, long time. And somehow the straight line mystery proved that they were from Mars, I think. And I don't even know how he came up with that idea. And you never even hear anybody talk about that anymore. Well, we hear about the ley lines, which are straight lines, but I don't think that had anything. I don't think that had anything to do.
come up with the theory that sightings seem to be centered around the 37th latitude line, which I think is a little bit of a leap. But
the UFO sightings happen at every longitude and latitude. I mean, they've been seen in the no, because just when you can pinpoint and say here are where UFO sightings are the most prevalent, they will disappear there and show up 2,000 miles away. And of course, in those days, outside of APRO, those days, I mean, we're talking about the 50s and 60s. In those days, nobody even considered that this was a global mystery. UFOs were supposed to be just, something that happened here, were observed here in the United States, because obviously we had a lot of degenerates and crackpots running around or something. I don't know. People with mental illnesses or alcoholics or whatever the skeptics would throw at you as being an explanation for what people were saying.
Lots of trailer parks.
Trailer parks. Well, I don't even know. I don't know if that's true. Drive-in theaters were big for a while. In fact, members of my family had a sighting over the drive-in theater, because I guess, again, people are outside and they're looking at the night sky and running to get hot dogs and popcorns and watching some zombie movie. So that's a very good place to see a UFO. And there were a lot of sightings around drive-ins, and also in regular parks, national parks and places like that, because people are outdoors. If you're sticking your head inside, you're not very likely to see anything unless it lands on your, back deck or something.
So therefore, just any place where people were outside and maybe had the chance to look up. This, of course, is a time when people were not looking down at their smartphones or their tablets.
Or their 40-inch TV sets, or their Skype, or reading our books, for example. I don't know. Yeah, I guess. But people still have sightings. There are a lot of sightings today are made by truckers because they're out on the road, and out by campers. There have been any number of supposed abductions that have taken place while people were out, camped out, and weird things happened to them.
Let's go to abductions here. And I assume the first abduction you heard about was Barney and Betty Hill, right, Tim?
I would guess that was certainly the most popular one. In our magazine, the Interplanetary News Service Report, we publish a lot of fringe stuff that nobody else would actually handle. I mean, I was never particularly interested in lights in the sky, except for the things that I saw myself. I always figured that this was a pretty much ground level phenomena, and if you were ever going to come up with a, like an explanation for it, you had to look, below treetop level and not up in the sky. I mean, even today, people are wowed and awed by all these postings on YouTube. And, we have some very good, I have my own YouTube channel. It's Mr. UFO Secret Files. And we've got some pretty good interviews. I mean, I would go around the country and take my video camera with me. In fact, I did a tape of Chris on his front porch. Unfortunately, the tape got all raveled and I was never able to use it. But I had, Ted Phillips and Tom Dongo and some very interesting, on the road type of interviews that I did. And I was putting them on disc and sending them out free with our books and all. I decided, well, I'll start a YouTube, a channel and get it up there. I mean, it's all below treetop level. I mean, things that happen in the sky are just never really have been an interest to me. And if you look at all these videos that are posted, most of them shot with a smartphone or something, so they're not going to be very good anyway. They don't prove anything. They prove that there are lights in the sky, and for thousands of years, we've seen lights in the sky. And you can't. It's like the Roswell alien mummy slides. You can't prove that they're anything because they're slides. And if there are lights in the sky, again, that's what you come up with is lights in the sky.
We'll get into more lights in the sky and things that aren't so light. We got a lot more to come with our old friend Tim Beckley, Mr. UFO. Maybe that's presumptuous, but that's what some people call him. With Gene and Chris, you're in
the Paracast.
Not just an alternative to the mainstream media. We're the premier independent talk radio network. We are GCN.
Attack of the Rockoids has been well received by critics and readers alike. It's a thrill-a-minute story you'll never forget. A former U.S. military intelligence officer is haunted by intense dreams about a beautiful woman pleading for his help after a terrible battle in outer space. But the dreams turn out to be true and thrust him into a telepathic love affair with a woman whose faraway planet is intent on destroying the Earth. And now the gripping tale continues in The Coming of the Protectors. It's the second book of the Rockoids trilogy, a galaxy-spanning adventure that pits our hapless heroes against powerful, fanatical enemies that threaten the lives of freedom-loving beings everywhere. Attack of the Rockoids and The Coming of the Protectors. Classic science fiction at its best, available now. For more details, visit rockoids.com. That's ROCKOIDS.com.
If the IRS has garnished your paycheck or seized money from your bank account, you need to get professional tax help now. Fast action is required to put a halt to these aggressive IRS collection tactics. You can count on the knowledgeable team of tax professionals at Wall & Associates. With over 30 years of experience, Wall & Associates has settled the tax problems of thousands of taxpayers for a small fraction of what they owed. For a free face-to-face consultation, call 1-800-425-4610 to put a wall between you and the IRS. 1-800-425-4610 or look for us on the web at wallandassociates.net. We solve tax problems. If you hire Wall & Associates today, you'll never have to talk to the IRS again. To stop the levies and seizures today, take action now. Call Wall & Associates at 1-800-425-4610. Wall & Associates, 1-800-425-4610. Based on actual cases, results may vary, not a solicitation for legal services.
It's time to build your own emergency food stockpile with the industry leader, My Patriot Supply. Once you try them, you'll know why so many Americans like you have made them part of their emergency preparedness plan. Experience the My Patriot Supply difference today with this unbelievable offer. Right now, a 4-week food supply is only $99, and that includes free shipping. That's 50% off the online price. Call 800-274-3070 to claim yours. Limit 2 per caller while supplies last. This offer isn't available online, so you want to make sure and grab this opportunity to get prepared today. 800-274-3070 to get your 4-week food supply for the incredible price of only $99, and it'll be shipped to you completely free. Call 800-274-3070 right now. That's 800-274-3070 to claim yours while supplies last. Don't wait. Call today.
Did you know that drinking pure, high-alkaline water is one of the most important factors in maintaining high energy and vibrant health? Most experts agree that the water you drink should be at a pH level of 8 or higher. AlkaVision Plasma pH Drops, available only at alkavision.com, combine a unique formula of only the most alkaline minerals. AlkaVision Plasma pH Drops alkalize your water, ridding the body of harmful toxins, and helps you regain health and energy. Alkalizing your water by simply adding 10 drops of AlkaVision Plasma pH Drops helps the body rid itself of acidic waste, increases oxygen content, and raises the pH of your body to healthy levels. And bacteria and viruses cannot survive in an alkaline high pH environment. Order your bottle of AlkaVision Plasma pH Drops for only $29.95 at alkavision.com. That's ALKAvision.com. Or call 269-409-1776. 269-409-1776. Alkalize your body. Supercharge your health at alkavision.com today.
This is Jerome Clark, author of the UFO Encyclopedia and other books. You're listening to the Paracast.
Tim Beckley of Global Communications Interplanetary News Service and all these other names that he's used over the years. He's also published about 200 books. And the reason I mentioned that is because when we were posting some information about the interview on our forums at forum.theparacast.com, I mentioned some of the authors, and a few of them are friends of the show, people you've heard on the show before. Certainly you've heard people like Nick Redfern, for example. He's been on the show frequently, and he's even in the past served as a guest co-host. And we've also mentioned people like Sean Castile and Tim Swartz and Brad Steiger and all that.
Wow.
But in the early days, you published some books from some people that we would call wackos, or to use the term that the late Long John Nebel used on his radio show. In the early days of talk radio, he called the crazy people whack-a-ding-hoy.
Oh, he did indeed. Yes, well, Gene, I'm not sure exactly what authors you're referring to. Perhaps somebody like T. Lomsink Rampa, who remains immensely popular. In fact, if I could find UFO authors that were popular even today as much as T. Lomsink Rampa would be, the UFO books would sell much, much better than they do.
Let's just interrupt here. Now, This fellow is somebody who is no longer alive, obviously.
That's correct.
All right. Who was he? Why would he be so popular?
Okay, well, the story goes is that he was actually a British plumber. He fell off a
British plumber.
Plumber, that's correct. He fell off a ladder or a stool one day, and when he regained consciousness, his body or his spirit had been taken over by a Tibetan Lama by the name of T. Lomsink Rampa. Now, this may sound odd or bizarre or very peculiar.
You think?
Especially, okay, well, yes and no. It probably was back in the 1950s when he put out his first book called The Third Eye, but today they're known as walk-ins. These are people who claim that they are actually here from some other place, some other star system, some other world, some other dimension, out to do a job or a chore to raise the consciousness of the planet. Now, a lot of these people, and we can get into this in a while too, are musicians and actors and rock stars and celebrities. Jimi Hendrix being one, Mark Boland being another a person along this line. I just did a book called Shirley MacLaine Meets the Palladians, The Amazing Flying Saucer Experiences of Celebrities, Rock Stars, and the Rich and Famous. And this is a very prevalent theme, that these people are here doing some chore to raise the spiritual vibrations of the planet, either through music or entertainment or their writing. And so you can't, if you believe in that concept at all, or the concept of reincarnation, it's really not that hard to follow this particular theme. And in addition, T. Lam Singh-Rampa, regardless of whoever he was a terrific writer. And that's something that's lacking, actually, Gene. You have to admit that in the UFO field, outside of John Keel and maybe Jerry Clark and Nick Redford. The field is lacking, really. Ivan T. Sanderson was a good writer. Of course, Gray Barker was immensely popular. Most of the writers are very dull as dishwater in this field, and the public is not going to pick up a book and pay, $24.95 and put it back down because they find it very dull or statistical.
In addition to having solid information, if you can't entertain people with a well-written book, then you don't get your message across. But that kind of mixes scientific information, we hope it's scientific, with entertainment.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't claim to be a scientist. My background is that of pretty much of journalism. I was a stringer for the Inquirer. I published and packaged numerous newsstand magazines, probably 30 different titles, everything from UFO Universe, which lasted for 11 years, and you did the typesetting on that, Gene, for most of that period. But
right.
I also,
and as a matter of fact, I did some editing on it. I cleaned up your editing. It was a combination
I'm sure.
of both.
Well, some of the writers certainly needed that, and some of them didn't. I mean, we had I look at my experiences in this field and my lifetime of doing this in two ways. First of all, independently, I have my own beliefs, which I have a right to, and people don't understand. Well, some people say, well, how can you publish a book if this conflicts with your thinking? Well, I'm also think of myself as a successful publisher, see? So some books I publish to entertain myself. I have books out there that I know when I publish are not going to sell a hoot. Those, believe it or not, Gene, are the most serious books. The most serious, what we would call the most serious books in the field, are the ones that are likely to sell the least amount of copies. The ones that tend to be a little bit more sensationalistic are the ones that people want to read about. And still what is very big are what we would call spellcasting books that have nothing to do with UFOs whatsoever. Every once in a while, a UFO book will come along that people seem interested in, like this one that we did recently called UFO Repeaters, The Camera Doesn't Lie, which is about people who seemingly have the ability to go out with their camera and take photographs of the sky and get unusual images on it. Some of it is psychic, like the late Stella Lansing. Betty Hill even had the ability, apparently. She would go out at night and sit on a particular stretch of road where she thought that they might be coming back and revisiting. And she got some unusual phenomena on her camera. Well, now, I don't know whether it's a physical ship that she photographed from outer space or whether this is something that she psychically imprinted there. But there are some people who have this uncanny ability to take photographs. And when the film is developed, there's something that you can't explain. And some of them do it over and over and over. And obviously, some of them probably are hoaxes, and a lot of them are not. So I publish books because it entertains people. I publish books because it educates people. And so I refuse just to publish the things that I'm interested in, which is no different than any other real publisher, Gene. Suppose I was, you and I were publishing books for Doubleday. Would we not take books that we thought would be profitable and stuff that perhaps would be against our political or personal or social agenda? Yes, we would, because it's publishing. And this country, one thing that almost everybody in this country can agree on is freedom of speech. We may be on the left, we may be on the right, we may be on the center, but boy, when you take our freedom of speech away, everybody seems to wear the same hat.
So the key here is, if you feel a book is not overtly lying or making fraudulent claims and has sales potential, you'll publish it.
Yeah, well, that probably would have been 10 years ago, Gene, because the book publishing business isn't what it used to be. Today we put out, most of our books are done in-house by a number of writers that we've used over the years, like Scott Corrales, Tim Schwartz, Sean Castile, William Kern. It's people that we can rely on. I look at a book now as like putting out a magazine, because most books are self-published now, to be honest with you, because big publishers won't touch them. It's not the market anymore. If you can put out a book and sell a couple of hundred copies, you're doing very good. Most publishers, even legitimate publishers, are now asking authors to pay to get their books published. And I was surprised at the number of publishing companies that was doing that.
Well, of course, you do have self-publishing capabilities at Create Space, which is from Amazon.
Yes.
And the way they do it is what they call print on demand. Let me explain this. They call it print on demand. What that means is you put the book up on Amazon. Every time someone places an order, they custom print it and mail it to your customer. You don't have to keep an inventory. You can. I mean, you could buy at a discount a number of copies of your book. But lots of people do that. Real publishers, not just individuals wanting to become publishers. Real publishers do this because they don't have to pay for the inventory. They don't have to put a lot of money up front. And as you mentioned, in the old days, book authors would get an advance against royalties. So the publisher's sales department would say, you know what? This book is going to earn that author $5,000. So we'll give them $4,000 and hedge our bets or something like that. And speaking of special offerings, we've got one. It's called After the Paracast. That's our premium podcast, available only, I repeat, only, to subscribers of the Paracast Plus. Last week, for example, we had Curtis Collins telling us about the Slide Gate, as we call it, and the Roswell Slides Research Group. And you can find out more from plus.theparacast.com, plus.theparacast.com. $5 a month, $50 a year, $175 for 5 years. A modest subscription. You get the ad-free version of this show, After the Paracast, all in one package. It's like paying less than 60 cents per show. That's pretty cheap, isn't it? Plus.theparacast.com. Today we're talking to one of my old friends. As you can tell, we have lots of history together and lots of things to talk about. And a few questions from our listeners as well. He's Tim Beckley. We've got more to come with Gene and Chris. You're in
the Paracast.
A little right, a little left, but always independent-minded. The Genesis Communications Network, GCN.
If you owe $10,000 or more to the IRS or state in back taxes, you know they'll never stop coming after you. With bank levies, wage garnishments, they'll even seize your home or business. The good news? A government program for tax debt forgiveness. It's called the Fresh Start Initiative.
I'm Paul Sibley with U.S. Tax Shield. We can help navigate the new laws, get you protected, and resolve your tax issues permanently.
Call the experts at U.S. Tax Shield now for your free consultation and get a guaranteed quote to resolve your case. Call 800-436-6451. That's 800-436-6451.
We the people grow cotton, weave fabric, engrave ink, embed strips and fibers to protect from counterfeit, then carting to a private bank, having it lent back at interest, forcing taxes to service debt. This capitalism, or was Jefferson correct when stating a central bank issuing the public currency is a greater menace to the liberties of the people than a standing army? Hi, Ted Anderson. I'm placing a free silver dollar in a book that explains our monetary system. Call for your copy, 800-686-2237. It's time to understand the system. Call 800-686-2237. That's 800-686-2237.
Hi, this is Steve Sanchez, and based on a recent study, it was found that 57 million Americans had legal issues over the last 12 months, but only 60% of those studied sought out the services of a lawyer. Why? In a nutshell, affordability. Well, my friends at Legal Shield have created a solution that can help you not if, but when you need an attorney. For as little as $17 per month, Legal Shield will provide you unlimited access to qualified attorneys at an accomplished law firm for advice and counsel on legal issues, no matter how serious or trivial. For over 40 years and with 1.4 million families across North America, Legal Shield can help you, the loyal GCN listener. Representatives are standing by now to answer your questions, so call them now at 1-855-340-SAVE. That's 1-855-340-7283, or visit them at lsprotection.com. That's lsprotection.com.
Results will vary from case to case.
Welcome back to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio. And now, here's Gene Steinberg.
With Gene and Chris on the Paracast, we have the one, the only Tim Beckley, who claims to have published over 200 books. And we mentioned that some of those books maybe you don't agree with. And a lot of those books are by people that we know on the show, such as Scott Corellis and Nick Redfern and people like that. Of all the books that you've published, Tim Beckley, looking back over a long history of publishing, which does go back around 50 years or so, because you started that as a teenager, what book or books are you most proud of?
Oh, boy. Well, of course, I have my own 2 books on the Men in Black, which is the UFO silencers, and the other one is the Men in Black UFO terrorists amongst us. I did a couple of books by Jenny Randalls. Actually, I published the
Tell us about Jenny Randall. She's still around, still active, but a lot of people in this day and age do not remember who she is.
She's one of the top British UFO researchers. She writes a regular column for the Fortean Times. She's probably, I would guess, the Nick Redfern of British UFO writers. I would assume that she's done well over 100 books on the subject. But the book that we published of hers that I was most enthused about is called From Out of the Blue. It was the first book published in the United States on the Bentwaters incident, the Rendlesham Forest UFO landing case. It sold reasonably well for what I would call a nuts and bolts book. And we did manage to sell the paperback rights to Beckley paperbacks. Now, in the old days, Gene, when you sold the paperback rights, you could be assured of selling 80 to 100,000 copies. By the time that we got into selling like paperback rights, sales had gone down below the 20,000 mark. And today, they're probably almost non-existent. I don't even think you could mention maybe a handful of books on the subject that are available in paperback because there's no place to sell them. We had a big chain here in New York, we still do, called Walgreens and Duane Reade. It's owned by the same owners. It's a pharmacy. Although now they're selling more food and candy and cookies and all that stuff than they are pharmaceuticals, because they're here in the tourist area, and people come in staying in the hotels and all here. They want a bite to eat at 2:00 in the morning. But they had their entire basement at one time must have had something like 2,000 or 3,000 paperback books. They were rack after rack after rack of paperbacks. And they had a small section on the occult and on UFOs. Most of them were romance novels. There was a big romance craze at one point. There must have been 5 or 6 publishers that were putting out maybe 100 books a month on romances, mainly aimed at the young women's market, and they sold very, very well. Now, if you go into the same pharmacies, you might find one little rack of magazines and maybe the top 25 paperback books. So that market is almost totally gone. And, of course, bookstores have closed. We used to publish, Gene, when we put out a new title, anywhere from maybe 2,000 to 3,000 copies of a book. Now, that's not a major publisher. They would do maybe 10, 15, 20,000 copies. But we had a little niche market. I had a mailing list of about 4,000 alternative metaphysical New Age bookstores. That list is down to about maybe 300 or 400 stores now. And most of those stores keep in business by selling what we call sidelines, incense, oils, what else? Talismans, crystals, and jewelry. If you go into a bookstore along that line, you might find a couple of hundred titles at most. So there are now more authors than there are readers for books. If you go to Amazon and type in UFOs, I think I came up with a total of 13,000 books. If you type in books about ghosts, there's like 7,000 or 8,000 books. Well, how many people are going to Amazon every day and looking for a book on UFOs? Correct? Maybe a couple of hundred or something like that, I would assume. And so how do they pick a book? If you don't know the exact name of a title of a book or of a particular author that you're looking for, well, who knows what's going to come to the surface? It's probably something, some author who's taken a couple of months to rewrite something that Chris and I have already written 10 years ago. It's just a leap of faith today to go out and try to buy a book almost on any subject, especially along this line, and come up with something where you're really going to learn something by. That's why I tell people go to Amazon and type in Innerlight-Global Communications, and you'll see over 200 covers, and you can make a selection there, make up your own mind. Some are serious books. They're books. They're books of all kind, and I think they're of value to some people. But enough about books. And you know what I did want to mention, Gene, is, it's the 51st anniversary of the National UFO Congress coming up this year. And for the first time in many years, there's actually going to be a public meeting held in Cleveland, Ohio, under the auspices of our longtime friend Rick Hilberg.
Tell people about this, because I was involved in the early establishment of this event.
Well, I believe we're still on the national organizing committee. Jim Moseley, I guess, is the legitimate founder of the movement. But basically, it was also the Cleveland crowd. It was Rick Hilberg, Al Manning, and Ron.
The late Dale Rettig.
Dale Rettig, that's correct. And Ron Pelger, I believe, was the fellow's name. And even Ed Beeble to some degree, and Alan Greenfield. And so most of us have not been together in many, many, many years. The actual last public meeting was held in Los Angeles with Jim Moseley and Lisa. I don't remember what her name was offhand, but she was going to carry the torch of the organization, and she did it for about 3 years, and then it fell apart. And that seemed to be the end of it until this last year, when everybody decided, well, we're getting up there in age, and we should continue on with the organization and see how our beliefs and our ideas and our theories and our research into this have changed over the years. So on June 19th to the 22nd, there will be the 51st reunion of the National UFO Conference in Cleveland, and it's honoring the real Gray Barker. I understand that's the theme of the program. Now, I don't know if how many actual formal speeches there will be given. I guess it's kind of open forum for people that want to get up and chat and discuss all these subjects. But if you just go to Google and you type in National UFO Conference, you'll get all the information. And I don't think there's any charge to get in or anything. There's a nominal fee for, like a cocktail hour, it's not an open bar, it's a public bar, and maybe a little dinner or something together with all the group. And we're hoping to see a lot of people that we haven't seen in many years to show up for this meeting on that stretches from the 19th to the 22nd. And Gene, we're certainly hoping you will be there.
Well, of course, I don't travel much these days because I don't cast reflections, so they can't get a photo ID of me because I don't exist. But seriousness aside, I'll consider it, okay?
Yes. I'm actually going to take the train, believe it or not.
Make sure the train doesn't go over 50 miles an hour on curves.
Yeah. Years ago, Gene, I was the editor, talk about editing different magazines. I was the editor of a magazine called Front Page Disasters. And I actually enjoyed doing that. I was kind of sad to see when the magazine folded after 3 or 4 issues, because it was something that I was kind of into, and I would manage to sneak like one article an issue into the magazine that had something to do with the offbeat of the strange. We did an article on the Bermuda Triangle. I did an article on this troop, World War I, that walked into a cloud and was never seen again. I think something about like 2,000 or 3,000 soldiers in Australia that walked into a cloud bank. So every issue I would put something different in the Front Page Disaster to kind of give it a little bit of flavor. And I did some research on which was the worst form of travel as far as accident, safety and accidents went, and eliminating car accidents, which of course are ghastly. They happen, it seems like every minute or two somewhere in the country. It was the train. The train was the worst than the bus, and it certainly was far more unsafe than the airplane.
Well, you know what? At this point, I haven't decided where I'd like to ride on anymore. I'm hoping for the Stargate. We've got Tim Beckley with Gene and Chris. You're in
the Paracast.
This is a nationwide announcement for consumers owing back taxes to the IRS. The slowdown in the U.S. economy has forced renewed action by the Internal Revenue Service. The IRS is now accepting reduced settlement amounts from qualifying consumers who owe back taxes. If you're eligible, your back tax settlement may be discounted by thousands of dollars. A specially assigned national hotline has been directly routed to Defense Tax Group. Consumers may now call and check their eligibility for a significant tax debt reduction. Financial stability is a major priority during this slow economy, so you're advised to dial this national hotline number now. 800-678-4191. If you owe more than $10,000 in back taxes to the IRS, you may now find significant relief. You could save thousands of dollars if you qualify. Call now and get free vital information and to check your eligibility for a significant tax debt reduction. Call the Defense Tax Group now. 800-678-4191. That's 800-678-4191. 800-678-4191.
Making the right decisions is a challenge to investors. Are we going to see economic growth, slide into a recession, or at worst, depression? Hi, Ted Anderson from Midas Resources. We all know when a company acts irresponsibly, divesting ourselves in a move towards safety is prudent. When the market becomes volatile, U.S. Treasuries are a safe haven. But what do you do when the U.S. government overextends itself and spends beyond its means? Many investors are turning toward gold as a common-sense alternative to traditional paper investments. Midas Resources has put together a powerful book titled 10 Reasons to Own Gold, discussing costs, benefits, risks, featuring full-color illustrations, weights, and measures. The book is free and can be yours by calling 800-686-2237. Paper investments are dwarfed by gold's 6,000-year history. Discover how gold may be right for you and your IRA by calling 800-686-2237. Whether buying or it's time for you to sell, the book is free. Call 800-686-2237.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
Hey neighbor, what are you doing digging? You had a heart attack last year.
Oh, I know. I was told no more hard labor.
Then why are you digging?
Well, I've been taking Extendovite. It's been approved to help my heart.
Extendovite? Is that a new drug?
No, not a drug. It's more like an herbal combination made from garlic and cayenne.
Herbal? How can that help?
Well, actually, we've taken herbs for thousands of years. And Extendovite is doing the job for me.
Does your doctor know about Extendovite?
Yeah, my doctor knows, and he said it seems to be working for you, so don't stop taking it. I feel great taking Extendovite. I don't want to stop.
To order, call 1-877-928-8822. That's 1-877-928-8822. Or visit our website at heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
The IRS is a private corporation, not a government agency. Income tax is collected by voluntary compliance. To learn to unvolunteer or discontinue volunteering into the IRS, visit escapeharassment.com and immediately implement Strategy 1. The process must be repeated each and every time. Paper, letter, envelope, presentment, etc. Always and forever. Failure equates to acceptance, subsequent resultant contract, and you pay or go to jail by your own consent and agreement contract. Avoid recontracting. Visit escapeharassment.com and implement Strategy 1 immediately. Bar lawyers and accountants won't help you. Why wait? Get Strategy 1 and immediately implement it to divorce the IRS today and forever. That's escapeharassment.com, Strategy 1, to be free from the IRS. Escapeharassment.com.
We'd like to hear from you. If you have a comment or question about the Paracast, send it to news@theparacast.com. That's news@theparacast.com. And don't forget to visit our famous Paracast community forums at forum.theparacast.com.
Now let's focus on some serious stuff here, because before we had you on, Tim Beckley, Chris and I were referring to the fact that people these days might actually be embarrassed to call themselves UFO investigators or ufologists. And I guess you can understand, especially the taint of certain recent events. But of course, Roswell slides, or as I call it, Slidegate, is nothing new. In the 1990s, we had the Santilli episode, the alien autopsy. We had MJ-12 in the 80s. I know some people think it's genuine. A lot of people don't. So with that, do you feel also that the UFO field has been made toxic?
Oh boy. See, I've kind of grown up a little bit different than this. I have a lot of other things that I do in life besides chase UFOs. I was in the publishing business. I promoted rock and roll bands for quite a number of years. I've done horror movies, so I've done a lot of things. And, people always respected me for being a creative person. I don't think over the years more than maybe 2 or 3 people ever came up to me and said, "You're a flake or a crackpot or a Looney Tune." I never pushed it on anybody. If they were interested in it, I would tell them about the subject. And you know something? A lot of people were interested in it, especially like musicians and stuff. I'd have conversations with them, and they're pretty intelligent people for the most lot. Even celebrities that I would interview for the Inquirer, a lot of them, when the formal conversation was finished, or I was finished interviewing them, they would ask me questions, and I'd end up hanging around a half an hour or an hour longer than the interview was supposed to last, because they were interested in what I had to say, as well as I was interested in what they were telling me. So I've never felt that stigma of being just a UFO researcher. Even the people that I published the magazines for, like UFO Universe, was part of a very big publishing empire. It was Goodman Publishing. That was the original name of it. But they had at one point something like 40 different magazines, and UFO Universe was just one of them. And then we did, if you remember, Gene, a few spin-offs. There was UFO Files and Unsolved UFO Sightings and all. And they were publishers, and they were hot on UFO Universe because at least it usually broke even. It was an inexpensive magazine to put out. At least it usually broke even.
So that's why you paid me so little to put it together.
Well, today, Gene, today you would get far less, because everybody is doing their own typesetting or doing it for very, very cheap. And nobody pays for material. At least, Gene, we paid for stories. We paid $100, $150 for an article, right? Today, nobody pays. I can't think of a magazine. Chris, do you know of a magazine that pays for material outside of maybe 14 times?
That's a good question. I really don't think so. I write for the World Explorers Club magazine, and I don't get paid. Of course, it's kind of a column that I have. But it's people like Sean Castile and Antonio Huneas, who wrote for many, many magazines and did articles for many magazines, would have a hard time making a living now.
I keep Sean busy. Antonio has kind of disappeared on us.
Yeah,
I did speak to him recently. He was working for Open Mind, the Open Mind people, the magazine, and doing a very good job, because he certainly had a huge inventory of material, especially when it comes to foreign researchers. He was very articulate. He did a lot of good interviews and all, and then he just kind of disappeared from the scene.
Yeah, what happened?
Well, I don't know exactly, but I guess he was let go from the magazine just because of financial circumstances there before they folded. At one point they were going to pay. I remember when I walked into their office, they were going to pay outlandish sums of money for articles, and of course I was very excited about that. But by the time I got around to writing an article, the price that they paid was reasonable, but was far, far less than what they had originally talked about. They were going great guns, but they knew nothing about publishing. I mean, they just didn't have a clue about distribution. The only place you could ever find the magazine was in Barnes & Noble, if you look very carefully for it. No promotion or advertising on it whatsoever outside of their own little clique there. Also, too, the thing that I told them is that you don't have to put out a magazine that is glossy like that in order to sell copies to the UFO base. You have to present them with material that's new, different, and exciting, and not the same old stories, issue after issue. And they don't care about seeing the Billy Meyer photographs again. And so most of these magazines are pumped up with pictures that are 30 years old. They're printing the same. And I was kind of guilty of that too, because there really aren't that many good UFO photographs. People would call me on the phone or send me an email, Gene, and they'd say, "Oh, I've got a great UFO photograph. How much will you pay for it? $25? I mean, look at even the Roswell slides. There wasn't one paper that I know of in the United States that picked up an article on this and published a story on the subject.
Let me tell you something here, very interesting. The Huffington Post apparently published an article, but it was very shortly withdrawn because of factual problems. And you didn't know that until you searched Roswell slides and you found the link to that particular article. So you're right here. Maybe there was coverage, but very little.
There was, as far as I know, it was covered on a news station in Chicago where the originator of the slides, the discoverer of the slides, lives, right? There was not, I even combed the Mexican newspapers. I did not see one single article about the conference down there in the big stadium. It was, outside of the people now that we see on the internet posting their harsh feelings about this, it almost seems to have been a non-event. Outside of a few thousand people who stake their lives on UFOs and are fascinated by the subject. I mentioned it to my friends. They don't even know what I'm talking about.
Well, it's not that small because the attendance was reported to be between 6,500 and 7,000 people in Mexico City. And maybe thousands, tens of thousands, and maybe a lot more paid for this on-demand or pay-per-view streaming session. I don't believe obviously people did see it.
I do not believe, Gene, that it was anywhere near that amount. I would bet you it was under $2,000 on demand. I searched for where I was going to pay to watch it. I couldn't find it until after the event was over. You couldn't even type it in and find out where it was streaming. It wasn't on like pay-per-view on your TV channel or anything like that. You had to hunt for the place to go and plunk your money down. It was very, very poorly organized, to be honest with you, and maybe there was a reason for that. I don't know. Do you think that these guys really didn't know that was a mummy? I mean, back on January 26th, I posted on the internet a photograph of a mummy that looked almost identical to the Roswell aliens, and this was still while the case was in its early, where they had announced, I believe, that, the May 5th would be the release date of this. And I had seen, maybe there was the grab shot was up there yet. I don't even remember. And it was easy to track down because, I've traveled around this country. I've been to the Southwest. I've been to Arizona. I've been to New Mexico. And alien mummies are kind of a dime a dozen.
Well, you know what? This is not a dime a dozen when we have Tim Beckley here. A wealth of information.
It's
more to come with Gene and Chris. You're in
the Paracast.
We are the premier independent talk radio network, the Genesis Communications Network, GCN.
Graphic Converter is the image manipulation tool for the rest of us. It does not use any database. You get full control of all your files. Want to view the images of a folder? Drag it into Graphic Converter and a powerful browser opens up to show your image files. You could use it for slideshows. You could use it to import images from digital cameras or from scanners. Need to do some image editing? You can do that too in Graphic Converter. Also print catalogs. Convert from so many formats I can't even list them. Download now to see if Graphic Converter is good for you, like 1.5 million other users. Guess what? You could save money when you buy Graphic Converter. Use the coupon code Night Owl. Use the coupon code Night Owl to get a special price for Graphic Converter. Go to lemkesoft.com. That's LEMKE soft.com. lemkesoft.com. LEMKE soft.com.
You haven't experienced yogurt until you've tried a Mossy, embodying health and flavor in a true whole milk, green-fed dairy beverage. Every sip pays homage to our old world cows and the ancient culturing methods their milk benefits from. With over 30 probiotics, a Mossy's undeniably nutritious, refined, cultured sensation bolsters your health and awakens your passion for dairy. A Mossy's so good, and you need to try it. Contact your Longevity distributor or call 877-878-4203 or go to gcnteam.com.
Hi, this is Ted Anderson. Have you ever wondered why banks, stockbrokers, investment advisors won't talk about gold IRAs? They've been available since 1986, yet the financial industry won't recognize the value of gold for your retirement. Gold has outperformed paper investments, yet no word about IRAs. If you would like to have gold for your retirement, call 800-686-2237. Don't get left behind by rising inflation and low returns. Call 800-686-2237. Secure your future and call 1-800-686-2237.
This is a nationwide announcement for consumers owing back taxes to the IRS. The slowdown in the U.S. economy has forced renewed action by the Internal Revenue Service. The IRS is now accepting reduced settlement amounts from qualifying consumers who owe back taxes. If you're eligible, your back tax settlement may be discounted by thousands of dollars. A specially assigned national hotline has been directly routed to Defense Tax Group. Consumers may now call and check their eligibility for a significant tax debt reduction. Financial stability is a major priority during this slow economy, so you're advised to dial this national hotline number now. 800-678-4191. If you owe more than $10,000 in back taxes to the IRS, you may now find significant relief. You could save thousands of dollars if you qualify. Call now and get free vital information and to check your eligibility for a significant tax debt reduction. Call the Defense Tax Group now. 800-678-4191. That's 800-678-4191. 800-678-4191.
If the IRS has garnished your paycheck or seized money from your bank account, you need to get professional tax help now. Fast action is required to put a halt to these aggressive IRS collection tactics. You can count on the knowledgeable team of tax professionals at Wall & Associates. With over 30 years of experience, Wall & Associates has settled the tax problems of thousands of taxpayers for a small fraction of what they owed. For a free face-to-face consultation, call 1-800-425-4610 to put a wall between you and the IRS. 1-800-425-4610 or look for us on the web at wallandassociates.net. We solve tax problems. If you hire Wall & Associates today, you'll never have to talk to the IRS again. To stop the levies and seizures today, take action now. Call Wall & Associates at 1-800-425-4610. Wall & Associates. 1-800-425-4610. Based on actual cases, results may vary, not a solicitation for legal services.
Hi, this is Joshua P. Warren, author of The Poor Man's Paranormal, and you're listening to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio.
Okay, so Tim Beckley is not an alien mummy or an alien daddy, but as he says, these mummies are not uncommon. The thing that bothered me when I look at this slide is it's in a display case with kind of a glass table. And you see someone, I guess a woman wearing a blue skirt and blouse was looking on it, was behind it at least. And you think here, if this was really an alien body, number one, it would be some kind of medical table. Number two, any personnel visible in the photo would be wearing protective suits. I mean, what about alien viruses? Why didn't anyone ask such sensible questions?
Well, that's the most important question right there. I don't know why anybody could not have seen this, But again, Jaime Maussan, and I don't want to say anything critical about anybody in the in the field.
In this case, he deserves criticism.
Okay, and this isn't the first time that he pulled something like this. Back about 2 years ago, Bill Shatner's people got in touch with me. Bill was doing a show called William Shatner, Weird or What? They had
William Shatner's case, it's what?
It was weird. Okay, anyway, they had this creature, this supposed alien that had been caught in a trap in Mexico. And Jaime Maussan was touting this as being a real extraterrestrial that had been trapped and killed by a farmer who later died under mysterious circumstances, he claimed, as if a curse had been put on him. Supposedly, they threw the alien in a vat of acid and it took its skin off, and then somehow it got caught in this trap. Well, they managed to get scientists, apparently, to say that this was a real creature and that it was a possibly an extraterrestrial. Well, they wanted me to come up to Canada and to confirm this. And, I told them basically, I said, I have to draw the line somewhere I mean, my credibility may be with some people on shaky ground as it is, but I can only go so far. So I said, this is obviously not an extraterrestrial. This is not something that traveled through space, in any kind of flying disc and landed here. It's a being or a creature or something that's about maybe 7 or 8 inches tall, perhaps. Later on, some people said it was a shaven monkey, but I don't know whether that's the case or not. Anyway, I did go to Canada, and my theory was that it was not an extraterrestrial, but it might have been a jinn, which, of course, is the Islamic equivalent of a demon of sorts. And we've talked about this on the air before, and we had some photographs that showed a correlation between this creature in the trap and what a jinn looks like. So I was willing to go that far, realizing that it was not an extraterrestrial and it possibly wasn't anything real at all. And they did have on different explanations. They had on the scientist who said that this had to be some sort of living being at one point. And they had on somebody else who said it was basically a creature made up of many different animals, that had been composited together and put in the trap. Well, I don't know what it was, but it certainly wasn't an extraterrestrial. And I can't believe how anybody with any academic credentials would go on the air like they did and say this was legitimate. But if you remember, Gene, even back with the alien autopsy video, which certainly was a hell of a lot better than the Roswell aliens here, They managed to get scientists, and they managed to get people with academic credentials and people in the entertainment business who came out and said, well, this could not possibly be a hoax. It would be too expensive to come up with an alien of this type and to record an autopsy. Well, that's nonsense, because I've been in the entertainment and the film business for a long time. I remember there was a guy many years ago, Gene, his name was Jack. I can't remember what his last name was, but he made money by buying the rights to movies that were made in South America and bringing them over here and dubbing them into English and releasing them. Most of them were women in prison films. Now, I don't know why.
Excuse me? You mean like Orange is the New Black?
Well, this was a long time ago, and these films were shown on mainly on Times Square and in secondary theaters and in drive-ins. Yes, there was. It has always been a very popular genre, believe it or not. And he would buy these films that were made in South America and bring them over here and edit them and add gruesome parts to it, like knife scenes and all that. Well, if you remember years ago, there was a controversy over snuff films, Gene, and whether they were legitimate or not. Well, this guy bought a film in South America where women were being chased through the jungle, by maniacs and so forth. And he tacked on a 5-minute scene at the end where somebody was being snuffed out, and they released it as being a legitimate film. Some people said, it was impossible for anybody to have created this. It had to be, authentic. Look at the woman they're gutting her on the table. Well, it was a magician's trick, Gene. They had her head sticking through, a hole in the bed that she was, supposedly on, and they had a fake dummy that they cut up and all, and it was gruesome, fake blood. But it cost the guy. I talked to the guy. It cost him like $3,000 to do. So anybody who doesn't know anything about movies doesn't realize that really some of this stuff is very economical and cheap to do. I knew guys when this alien autopsy film came out who had better looking aliens. They were 17-year-old would-be filmmakers, and they had better looking aliens in their basement. And it cost them nothing to do because they were creative.
Well, nowadays, of course, if you want to become a filmmaker, you can actually do it on your iPhone. You can do it on your iPad. And they do use these things for commercial films or TV shows. You could do it with a not expensive digital camera. Get some desktop editing software. Apple charges $300 for a Final Cut Pro 10. And despite some problems with the original release, it is used in the TV and film industry. It's not expensive to get involved. And anyone with a reasonable amount of artistic skills can produce some incredible stuff. So, I don't know. We're kind of moving aside from some of the critical issues here. But how does the UFO field, and we'll have a few questions from listeners soon, but how does the UFO field, Tim Beckley, get any credibility at all when they keep falling into this trap year after year?
Well, I often wonder, Gene, who exactly are they trying to get credibility from? First of all, the disclosure people are out to get congressional hearings. That is not very likely to happen.
Well, we had it happen in the 1960s, and that went nowhere. It gave us the Condon Committee.
Yes, indeed. But also, too, what does the government actually know about UFOs? Of course, that is a mystery to most people. I would say that, if anything, maybe there are only a handful of people in the military who have known anything legitimate about this subject over the years. Everybody else is open to the same basic information that is available to you and I. I mean, if I were the president of the United States and people would pressure me about this continuously, you know what I would tell them? Go to your bookstore, go to Amazon.com, find a couple of books, read them, and make up your own mind. Because it's like telling people what to believe as far as religion goes. How are you going to get? You're not going to. The president isn't going to go on TV, on the 6 o'clock news and tell you about what religion you should follow. And he's not likely to go on TV and tell you, what UFOs to believe in and what UFOs not to believe in, because probably it's a mystery to most people. And if a politician is not interested in the subject, he's not going to go out and investigate it. It's got to be something that happened to him personally, or somebody maybe that's a part of his what's the word that I'm looking for? It's like these guys from Rendlesham Forest now. They got in touch with their congressmen and their senators because they couldn't get their medical records, right?
We're talking specifically about John Burroughs here.
John Burroughs, correct. Okay, now I know John Burroughs. In fact, years ago when John got out of the military, he moved to Phoenix.
Right, and we'll get into that in a moment because John was actually over here at the studio for one of the tapings. We got more to come. Yeah. And we've got Tim Beckley to tell us now more of these histories of possible government knowledge and or involvement with Gene and Chris. You're in
the Paracast.
Free from the shackles of corporate America, we're the place for independent thinkers. GCN.
Are you suffering from EP? The symptoms include fraudulent charges to your credit card. Your subway card says it's empty, but you bought it yesterday. Someone's been in your hotel room, but the desk clerk says they only show you entering the room. These are signs of EP. Electronic pickpocketing. Payment cards, transit cards, even hotel room keys use a radio chip, so you can just wave your card at the register, the turnstile, or your hotel room door. But what's convenient for you is also convenient for thieves, waving scanners to electronically pickpocket you without even touching you. The good news is there's a cure. ID Stronghold has created leather wallets and clutches that have built-in EP protection. Layers of shielding material cleverly concealed in a beautiful leather wallet that stops the symptoms of EP. Go to idstronghold.com now and get the cure. idstronghold.com. Warning, ID Stronghold wallets could lead to feelings of safety and security, comfort in crowds, and euphoria. If you experience these emotions, immediately inform your friends and family about idstronghold.com so they can feel better too.
It's absolutely heartbreaking. All over America, people are suffering from issues related to angina pain, high blood pressure, congestive heart failure, irregular heartbeat, clogged arteries, and high cholesterol. Can you live your life free from sickness, pain, and fear, and experience your body healing itself? Look to Heart and Body Extract, an all-natural supplement that aids ailing bodies. It has an exclusive formula of wild-crafted and organic herbs. End the pain without all the side effects of prescription drugs. People 20 years younger will envy your vitality. Want a happier, healthier you? Then go to heartandbody.com or call toll-free 866-295-5305 for free information. Heart and Body Extract offers a lifetime guarantee with no price increase in over 14 years. What are you waiting for? Call Heart and Body now at 866-295-5305 for your free information. Go to heartandbody.com, 866-295-5305. Distributor inquiries welcome. The human body is extraordinary, despite all the stress we inflict upon it. Thousands of people across the country use an extremely effective product to help their bodies stay balanced. It's Heart and Body Extract, an all-natural herbal formula designed to help maintain healthy blood pressure, clean arteries, promote good circulation, and balance cholesterol. Heart and Body Extract, along with good nutrition and exercise, can give you a life free from pain, sickness, and fear. Recapture your youthful vitality and experience your body healing itself with the aid of Heart and Body Extract. Learn more and read scores of testimonials from satisfied customers at heartandbody.com. Heart and Body Extracts offers a lifetime guarantee with no price increase in over 14 years. For free info, call 866-295-5305 now. That's 866-295-5305 or heartandbody.com. Distributor inquiries welcome. 866-295-5305.
The Genesis Communications Network is one of America's premier broadcasters of captivating talk radio. We thank you for listening. Now, just imagine there are thousands of people who are just as passionate about radio as you are. But what you may not realize is how easy and affordable it is to advertise with us. Radio commercials for your business could be heard on hundreds of radio stations across the U.S. every day. We can help you by creating an effective radio advertising campaign for your company. From script writing to producing your commercial, just like the one you're listening to right now. No other network provides the level of customer service we do. When it comes to radio advertising, we are your one-stop shop. And no matter how big or small your business is, we can help. Email us at advertise@gcnlive.com, and an experienced advertising executive will help you take the first step towards driving more customers to your business or website. Advertise@gcnlive.com. Easy, affordable, effective.
Hi, it's Grant Cameron from presidentialufo.com. You're listening to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio.
When Tim Beckley gets started, he doesn't stop. Let me tell you before we go on, we have another radio show called After the Paracast. It's available exclusively to subscribers of the Paracast Plus. To get on the list to download each week's version, go to plus.theparacast.com, plus.theparacast.com. We also give you higher quality audio version of the Paracast, and we knock out those network ads. 41 minutes of those network ads gone. So those of you who wanted an ad-free version of the show, that's how you get it. It's a modest subscription fee, plus.theparacast.com. We're talking to Tim Beckley, and you mentioned here that you got in touch with John Burroughs years ago when he moved to the Phoenix area.
Yeah, we were holding regular conferences there in Phoenix for quite a number of years. And John Burroughs had just gotten out of the service and had moved to the Phoenix area, and Larry Warren was living there. So somehow I managed to get John Burroughs on the phone, and I said, why don't you come down? Because there was still at that time a little bit of bad blood between the two of them and a little bit of disagreement as to whether Larry was actually there on one of those nights, which of course he was. But that's another story. So I invited John down to the conference, and the two of them actually had a public debate. And this would have been years and years and years before Rendlesham Forest really was getting the attention that I think that it deserved. I knew Larry was telling the truth because he was the original whistleblower on this. And back in 1980, I think it was 86, there was a town meeting that was held in the high school in Brewster, New York. Dr. Hynek was there. Jacques Vallée was there. A lot of credible researchers were there. It was organized by Peter Gersten, the lawyer at the time, because of all the sightings that had taken place in Westchester County. And the public wanted to know what it was, this triangle, this boomerang-shaped craft that was being seen by thousands of people, what it was and what was the explanation for it. So they had a town hall meeting that about 500 people actually showed up. And Larry Warren was on the stairs of the high school, or maybe it was the middle school, of the Brewster High School, talking to people for the first time about what had happened to him in 1980. So this was years before any of the books were written, before Lieutenant Halt got out there and his tape was being played and so forth. If it wasn't for Larry, I doubt if any of this would even have come out, into the public domain.
Speaking of Rendlesham, we do have some questions, and this one's from SRI, and he's wondering if anyone would like to. He says, "I'd like to hear Tim's impression of Peter Robbins of course, who is co-author of Left at Eastgate, and perhaps recap a few of the experiences that both Tim and Gene encountered back in ufology's good old days, which we've kind of done that. But what is your impression of Peter and Larry, and I guess your impression of Peter's work with that?
Oh, I think it's a tremendous body of evidence. I mean, he and Larry spent, I think, 9 years working on their book, as opposed to, a year or so that Nick Pope and Pettingston and Burroughs worked on theirs. It's got everything in there. I mean, it's got pretty much all of the evidence, and the stories, the experiences have not changed. Of course, I know Larry Warren pretty well. I mean, I've hung out with him, socially. There's another side of Larry that I guess a lot of people don't know. He was involved in the entertainment business. Of course, he is a musician in his own right. He knew a lot of the jazz musicians and Stevie Ray Vaughan and so forth. He's played with a couple of bands. So he does have a certain magnetism and charisma to him. And I think of anyone, he's best suited to get the story out about Rendlesham Forest, But now there are so many different stories and so many different directions that this is coming to us from, that it seems to have gotten kind of like Roswell, a little bit more convoluted. But it is the only recent case that I can think of that seems to be at some point where maybe we could find out a little bit something more about it. There must be some more government records on this that have not been released. And, of course, the medical the information on these fellows' medical background and what happened to them because of those 2 or 3 nights there in the forest.
Do you think that the finally Burroughs getting access to his medical records is a sort of tacit acknowledgement of the legitimacy of the case by the government, as some people are claiming?
Yeah, I would obviously think so. And why would they go to the extent that they have to keep the records not only from him, but from other agencies, including medical doctors and people from the Veterans Administration who have tried to get a hold of the records? That doesn't seem forthright in any regard, does it? I mean, okay. Well, I would think that there's some gross neglect there on the part of some government agencies to give him and the public the information that should be readily available to his doctors and people at the Veterans Administration. I mean, there's just something wrong with this. Why would they hide the information? Even if they sanitized it, they should make it available to them.
Yeah, you would think. Well, it's almost like, remember the lawsuits back in the mid-'90s by workers at Area 51 and was thrown out of court because the base didn't exist. So how could they sue the government for health damage that they experience at a base that doesn't exist? Now that the CIA has acknowledged the existence of the base, I would think that those people would be doing another class action suit against the government now that there's been official acknowledgement of the base's existence.
Well, are any of them still alive? That might be
that's a good question.
Be one of the problems.
I don't know.
Yeah, that might be one of the problems right there. The dead can't sue, I suppose. I would say if there's anything to come from UFO hearings or involvement in any of the government or senators or congressmen, this is where it would come from, because here they don't have to point at lights in the sky. It's a medical issue. It's something that a veteran is deserving of this information. See, so this makes them the good guy instead of looking like some weird person who sees UFOs in the sky or something. This puts them and the whole subject perhaps in a more positive spin. So if anything is ever going to come from this, I would say that this might be the area in which we should push, instead of touting forth all these witnesses, some of whom are very good. But, the thing with disclosure is you've got some good witnesses and you've got some there that certainly don't deserve to be, put in the public domain, especially during the middle of those non-congressional hearings. But they were interesting, right? They bring out this guy who's supposedly, breathing very difficult, and he's a few days before he's going to die, and he talks about, all this military stuff. Well, that seemed pretty hokey to me. I mean, if there was anything hokey, that certainly was. And I don't think that necessarily belonged as part of the of that meeting. It kind of again it kind of steered it off into a very negative light. It's something that had not been vetted, something that had not been proved, and we don't know whether that guy's dead or alive or was just an actor that was brought in.
Right.
I mean, how much background check do they do on some of these people, I wonder?
Yeah. Well, Paul Hillier's closing statement was the one that really drove me up the wall.
And what was his closing statement?
Well, he was reading from Jim Sparks' very questionable account of his alleged abduction, which it just, I don't know. I have a hard time with the story to begin with, but to read the quote the aliens and what they had to say to him as a way to end this week-long exercise, to me it just it's like taking a samurai sword to a balloon and just popping it, boom, just all the gravitas.
I don't suppose though, Chris, that you can censor anybody on giving their opinions about UFOs, especially if you call them forth, because just like on the Paracast here, you had how many different guests, Gene, have you had on here? A couple of hundred, maybe more than that by now, right? Everybody's got their own opinion. If you were to parade them in front of a congressional hearing, they would just pretty much tell what they've told on the air, and a lot of people would shake their head in disagreement, and some people would shake their head in agreement. You never get a totality of agreement on any of this, and I don't think that you ever will, because UFOs are something different to me than they might be to the next person or to you guys. See, UFOs are unidentified, and that's what they are. And you can't readily identify them. So you can put, I remember going into a newsstand one time and asking the owner if he carried UFO Universe magazine, and he looked at me. I don't even think he knew what a UFO was, but he said, why would I carry that magazine? What could you possibly have to say?
I have something to say now, and we have to do this break. With Gene and Chris, with Tim Beckley, you're in
the Paracast.
A little right, a little left, but always independent-minded. The Genesis Communications Network, GCN.
If you owe $10,000 or more to the IRS or state in back taxes, you know they'll never stop coming after you. With bank levies, wage garnishments, they'll even seize your home or business. The good news? A government program for tax debt forgiveness. It's called the Fresh Start Initiative.
I'm Paul Sibley with U.S. Tax Shield. We can help navigate the new laws, get you protected, and resolve your tax issues permanently.
Call the experts at U.S. Tax Shield now for your free consultation and get a guaranteed quote to resolve your case. Call 800-436-6451. That's 800-436-6451.
Hi, this is Ted Anderson. Have you ever wondered why banks, stockbrokers, investment advisors won't talk about gold IRAs? They've been available since 1986, yet the financial industry won't recognize the value of gold for your retirement. Gold has outperformed paper investments, yet no word about IRAs. If you would like to have gold for your retirement, call 800-686-2237. Don't get left behind by rising inflation and low returns. Call 800-686-2237. Secure your future and call 1-800-686-2237.
You've heard them on Alex Jones. You've seen them on Ancient Aliens. Now come see them live at Contact in the Desert 2015 in Joshua Tree this May. Experience 4 full days of science-centered lectures, workshops, intensives, and fieldwork on ancient astronauts, extraterrestrial intelligence, human origins, crop circles, contact experiences, UFO sightings, and more. Meet Chariots of the Gods author Eric von Daniken, Ancient Aliens host Giorgio A. Tsoukalos, New York Times bestselling author David Wilcock, Dead Doctors Don't Lie author Dr. Joel Wallach, astronauts Edgar Mitchell and Story Musgrave, Earth Files publisher Linda Moulton Howe, author Jim Mars, and many of the world's most respected researchers and scientists exploring answers to one of the greatest questions of all time. More speakers, more panels, more things to do. Join us at the Joshua Tree Retreat Center, which has a long history of sightings and contact experiences. For advance tickets and conference schedule, go to contactinthedesert.com. That is contactinthedesert.com.
Welcome back to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio. And now, here's Gene Steinberg.
So you went to the newsstand, you asked about UFO Universe, Tim Beckley, and the proprietor says, why would he carry anything like that, right?
Yeah, and he said, what could you possibly write about UFOs issue after issue? And I tried to explain to him that you could write almost anything that you wanted about the subject, because UFOs are identified, and therefore each writer has their own opinion and their own take on the subject.
But going back to congressional hearings here, the thing that you'd have to demonstrate if such a thing were to occur again, because again, as I said, we had those hearings nearly 50 years ago. If it happens again, you'd merely have to demonstrate that there is a credible phenomenon that may potentially present a national security issue, but at least it's an unknown scientific phenomenon, and you don't have to give a solution, because I think that's the worst thing you can do. You don't say it's spaceships, you don't say they're interdimensional. I kind of go for Leslie Kane's view on that particular issue, that you don't go to people like this and push a particular point of view. You push the existence of a mystery that needs to be solved.
Well, yes, but again, in today's atmosphere of everything going on with international terrorism, climate control, and everything else you can imagine, how important on a scale of 1 to 10 are UFOs? And then you get, let's face it, the opposition. If you're a Democrat and you make some comment about UFOs in a positive vein, the Republicans are going to get all over your case, and vice versa. It would have to be a unified statement made either by both parties, which is not likely to happen because they haven't hardly agreed on anything in the last 20 years, or you'd have to get some international organization like the United Nations to become involved in this. And there was an attempt, of course, many years ago to get the UN to set up some sort of international committee. In fact, I was there for the, I don't know if you would call them hearings, because it was a public forum, but it was Dr. Hynek and astronaut Gordon Cooper and the pilot, I guess his name was Coyne, that was a helicopter pilot over Ohio that had seen this thing, veering towards his chopper and so forth. And they, Dr. Hynek, they had a very high-level meeting there, and they tried to get the UN to set up some sort of international committee at a very low expense. And we know that the UN has all kinds of committees on everything. And everybody except for the island of Grenada and India voted against it. Here are how many nations in the United Nations that never agree on anything, but when it comes to UFOs, they all got together and said nay, which I do think is very peculiar, because, like I say, the UN has all kinds of subcommittees looking into all kinds of things, some of potential of value to humanity, and some of everybody's waste of time, but they still do it. So to set up a committee to look into UFOs does not seem to be something that is too far-fetched, because if we ever do get to the point where we have to say hello to somebody from somewhere else, who's going to do it for us?
Stephen Greer.
Oh, let's not joke.
Well, he's our ambassador to the universe. Come on.
Well, actually, no, I do believe that the United Nations has a woman who does have something similar to that title, but I don't believe she's ever pressed any of this or seemed to want to do anything with, to get the ball rolling on this. So we're back to square one. There will never be a disclosure. If there were 1 million people, let's say that everybody who has seen a UFO or claims to have been abducted decides to take to the street and demonstrate, thousands of people, tens of thousands of people, what does it take to get the government's attention on any a subject? Hundreds of thousands of people taken to the street, not even 5,000 people, not even 10,000 people. I mean, look at all the situations in Ferguson and all these other towns. A couple of thousand people, just it doesn't hack it. You've got to bring tens of thousand people to demonstrate and to show that there's something to the subject. A couple of thousand people faxing into their senator or sending an email to their congressman isn't going to do anything, because there's already too many topics on their desk, which they can't deal with even now under normal circumstances. So UFOs would just be something that would destroy them even worse than they're being destroyed by members of the opposite political party.
Maybe a groundswell of threats of future anal probing if they don't do the right thing and hold hearings.
Well, maybe some of those guys would like that, I would assume.
Well, I find it ironic that the only country that really decided to get involved was Grenada, where they did have an actual meeting. I think Heineken Valley were there, and Lee Shargel, I think, was there. He covered it. And what happened? The premier of Grenada was deposed by the U.S. Marine Corps.
Yeah, they had, but it wasn't him. That was Sir Eric Gary. But I think somebody else had taken over the government, a communist, and he had fled to some penthouse apartment in the Bahamas or something somewhere. He had just totally disappeared. But they did actually put out a series of postage stamps, which actually they're not the first country to put out UFO postage stamps, because, a lot of countries make a huge income on selling postage stamps on all kinds of subjects to stamp collectors around the world. In fact, there was a whole series of postage stamps with George Adamski on them, and I can't remember offhand what little country put them out. But there's the bell-shaped craft of the mothership, and George Adamski's smiling face on the postage stamp. And Grenada had their own series of postage stamps on that. Maybe they had the Adamski stamps. I don't remember, but they tried. They did at least get it in front of the UN. They did get the ball rolling, but China, Korea, the only country that voted in favor of setting up the committee was India. Everybody else voted. How is that possible? Most countries either abstain. If they don't know anything about the subject, they just pass on it, right? Here they voted against it. That, to me, seems really, really peculiar. Who do they go back to? Obviously these ambassadors and the people who vote on this have to go back to somebody in their country and find out which way they're going to vote. It's not something that they make up their own mind on. So somebody obviously in all of these countries has to say, nay, you're not voting in favor of this because it's against our policy.
Well, governments never get together on anything anyway. You have to show a compelling political reason for them to get together, an immediate threat. I mean, if they thought that E.T. was landing tomorrow or had evidence of something of that nature, they do it. But right now, clearly, there's either a threat they're afraid to reveal, or they don't think it's a threat, or they just don't think it's worth anything. I think I've also suggested a number of times in the show that if there is a secret, it's probably been funneled off to private industry.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And, I think that I sat there years ago listening to Long John Neville on my transistor radio, and it might have all started in Roswell. And I have always thought, even the internet, Gene, if somebody from some other planet, if some other civilization wanted to find out everything there was to know about us, what would they do? They'd give us the means to start our own internet so that we could post everything that possibly know about our civilization and everything that goes on there, so that they don't even have to come here and travel thousands of millions of light years to get here. All they have to do is tap into our internet, and they can type in any subject just like you and I do. Google
Okay,
it.
just a minute here. We're getting too far afield here. You're suggesting then that maybe the internet was created not by some scientists back in the 1970s. It was part of a government project, but to benefit the aliens.
Well, I mean, it's a far-fetched idea, but
very far-fetched is not the beginning of it, my friend.
No, I don't see why. Why would it be that far-fetched? It could be like the modern Trojan horse. We don't know if the aliens seem aliens, and we just use that for a better term. I call them the ultra-terrestrials because we don't know where they're from or what their main objective is. But we do have many instances in cases where they are able to control the minds of others, freeze people so that they can't move, levitate them into other rooms, take them through walls, do all these miraculous things. So who says that we can't plant some of this information into the minds of scientists and academics?
Let's go on with this because I'm having a problem with his logic. Thank you. I have to do a break.
That was a good one, though, Gene. I think Tim's being very creative there.
Yes. With Gene and Chris, you're in.
Be creative.
With Gene and Chris, you're in
The Paracast.
Neighbors, are you tired of dealing with a slow web hosting provider? Well, check out A2 Hosting and their screaming fast Swift server platform. They even have SSDs that load pages 300% faster than the competition. Ready to give your site a speed boost? Well, tell you what, neighbors, head on over to a2hosting.com. That's A2, that's number 2, a2hosting.com. Check out their Prime hosting account. And get this, neighbors, they're even giving you an exclusive 25% off discount for all our listeners. 25%. And remember, their Guru Crew support team is standing by 24/7, 365 days a year to answer any of your questions. Now, to get the discount, use the coupon code GENE when you check out.
Gold. It's like nothing else on Earth. From the Romans through the Renaissance, from the Industrial Age to the Space Age, gold has weathered the test of time. For 6,000 years, gold has remained the ultimate store of wealth. According to the World Gold Council and the U.S. Mint, demand is at an all-time high. The stage is being set for the reemergence of gold as the common-sense alternative to a fiat paper currency that gets weaker every day. Midas Resources is proud to offer the hard-hitting report that arms you with the truth you need to protect you and your family from the Fed's plans for your hard-earned money. Don't gamble with your future. Call Midas Resources today and ask for your free copy of As Good as Gold. Call 1-800-686-2237 for the report the Fed hopes you'll never see. As Good as Gold can be yours by calling 800-686-2237. If you have ever thought about owning gold, you must read this report. Call Midas today at 800-686-2237.
Don't complain about your cable bill going up and up and up. Do something about it. Grab a pencil and jot down this special number, 1-855-905-MY-TV. The more cable TV rates go up, the better digital satellite TV looks. Say goodbye to the cable guy and get more of your favorite channels in 100% digital quality for less money. Call 1-855-905-MY-TV. Sign up for packages starting as low as $19.99 and there's no equipment to buy. You get free HD TV upgrade, a free DVR upgrade, and free professional installation. You control what you watch when you watch it. Record your favorite shows, pause and rewind live TV, even skip the commercials. Watch local channels too. At just $19.99, what are you waiting for? Pull out your major credit or debit card. Call 1-855-905-MY-TV. 1-855-905-MY-TV. Say goodbye to the cable guy. Cut costs and get more. 1-855-905-MY-TV. 1-855-905-MY-TV.
If you constantly feel run down and tired, your pH level might be low and your body could be full of toxins. If what you drink is not at a pH level of 8 or higher, you are inviting bacteria and acid to thrive in your body. But there is something you can do. Simply add 10 drops of AlkaVision Plasma pH drops to your water to help your body rid itself of acidic waste, increase oxygen, and raise your pH balance to optimum levels. AlkaVision Plasma pH drops combine a unique formula of the most alkaline minerals in the world, alkalizing the water you drink, ridding your body of acidic waste and toxins, and helping you regain energy and vibrant health. And studies show viruses, bacteria, and toxins cannot survive in an alkaline, high pH environment. Order your bottle of AlkaVision Plasma pH drops at alkavision.com. That's ALKA vision.com. Or call 269-409-1776. 269-409-1776. Alkalize your body. Supercharge your health at alkavision.com today.
We'd like to hear from you. If you have a comment or question about the Paracast, send it to news@theparacast.com. That's news@theparacast.com. And don't forget to visit our famous Paracast community forums at forum.theparacast.com.
So, yes, maybe Tim is being creative about the aliens inventing the internet to keep tabs on us. But, you know, as a practical matter, wouldn't it be more proper to just increase the number of talk shows? So this way you listen to the talk shows, you get a sense what Earth people are talking about, what they're interested in. Why the internet? Yeah. Doesn't make sense.
But we are being broadcast over the internet. Is that not true?
It's not broadcasting in the sense of its wireless transmission. Can you receive the Wi-Fi signal 10 light years away?
Yeah, but maybe you don't need that. Maybe all you need to do is have a couple of computers down here somewhere with some sort of, like a broadcasting ability or something that would send it out. I remember a case now. I just wrote it up in the UFO repeaters, the camera doesn't lie. There was a fellow who had a talk show host up in New England on radio station WOON out of Woonsocket, Rhode Island. Maybe you'll recognize the name, Gene. His name was Joe Ferrier. Yes, he's on the same station that Paul Eno is on, but he was on Woon in Woonsocket, Rhode Island 50 years before Paul was there. He had invited me up to do his show back about 50 years ago, actually. And he did not broadcast on UFOs. He was not an Art Bell or a Gene Steinberg. He had a daily talk show program that I believe was on at noon or on drive time or something like that. He had UFO sightings. In fact, if you check the internet, you'll find that he had taken a series of UFO photographs on a number of different days. Some were cigar-shaped craft. He even had some actually good video that he took, but he never really pushed this. As a kid, maybe slightly older than we are, he did put out a little newsletter called the Controversial Phenomena Bulletin. You know, he exchanged it with us. I'm sure I don't have any copies left anymore. But basically, he had a series of jobs and occupations throughout his life. But he was on the radio, and he had a used record shop in Woonsocket where he sold old books and old records and stuff along that line.
I remember the publication, by the way.
Yes. Okay. It was Joe Ferrier and Armin Leprade were the two publishers. They were partners at one point. It was mimeographed, and I think they actually even colored in some of the pages by hand just to make it look a little sharp, like they were publishing in color or something, you know. Anyway, he did have a series of UFO sightings kind of growing up, which I guess got him interested in the subject to some degree. He told me the story, and this has been repeated on Paul Eno's Behind the Paranormal program. He was hitchhiking as a teenager one day. He was on a lonely stretch of road, and his car pulled over, and there was a middle-aged couple. He said the woman was very attractive. The man was very handsome, almost like a soap opera star. They asked him where he was going, and he said, I don't know, maybe 15, 20 miles away. And they told him to take a seat in the back of the car that they could take him to his destination. Well, he noticed something very unusual in the back of the car. There were a number of, I guess the best way to describe it, are square boxes, but they weren't made out of cardboard. And they seemed to be kind of lighting up and flickering. I don't know, there were maybe a dozen of them back there. And he was curious about them, but they told him, please don't touch the boxes. And they told him that they were driving around the country, and they were leaving these boxes off at certain destinations, either with people or to implant them into the ground or in some wooded area or into some hiding place where they could not be found. And they were supposed to help lift kind of the vibrations of the planet or something to do, positive for us. Isn't it possible that if this story is true and they left these boxes behind, that this might not be sending messages to their planet? Plus, there have been messages. There have been a lot of audio signals, both verbal and kind of like Morse code, that have been picked up on by our ham radio operators all over the world. And even our own astronauts have picked up voice commands over their supposedly, closed channels of somebody broadcasting. So who's to say that information that's gotten here about our civilization and the way we live isn't being sent back to somewhere else? Doesn't necessarily have to be on another planet. It could be in a mothership. It could be in an underground cave. It could be anywhere. But certainly they could keep tabs on our planet without having to come back and forth, on a regular basis. And that's maybe why we see a slack in really good UFO sightings in the last couple of years. Maybe they just don't have to return here all the time.
Well, they don't even have to send living beings here. They can send robots, cyborgs, something else.
Well, apparently they have on some occasions.
Well, the other issue I want to talk to you about is what you mentioned with regard to UFO abductions, where people think they've been levitated or taken through walls. Do you really assume here that those experiences are physical experiences exactly as described?
No, I wouldn't say that. But okay, let's take the case, for example, of I had a friend who lived in Joshua Tree, California. In fact, just last week I was on the Travel Channel. There's a new show out called Mysteries in the National Parks. And I did a whole episode with them on the Joshua Tree and Death Valley. There was a gal who lived there who told me about she was having a series of UFO sightings. At least one instance, she was actually taken through the wall of the house that she was living in, and she found herself inside some craft. Now, I have been told these stories where people are levitated over and over and over again and taken through physical objects, which, of course, would be impossible in the physical body. But again, I always say what happens in the seance room also seems to be repeated in UFO encounters. So I have come to the conclusion that a lot of this is of a psychic, metaphysical vein. It is not physical. Now, are you saying, could this person still be asleep in their bed and they're dreaming this, or is this an astral trip? I don't know. All I can do is I can tell you is that this has been repeated to me over and over again. There's one very good case that was on the TV show. I guess you can find it with Leonard Nimoy. I think it's In Search Of, right? That was the name of his program. And there's a fellow in one of the episodes that I interviewed. In fact, I'd spent some time investigating the case. I wrote it up for, I think originally the National Star, which of course is the glossy celebrity gossip magazine today. It was owned by Rupert Murdoch at that time. I don't know who owns it now, but it was an imitation of the Inquirer. I was writing for all the tabloids, and I wrote for the Star. Well, we did an article in there, which is a case about this hunter in Wyoming by the name of Carl Higdon. It seems to be one of the most easily verifiable and credible cases. He went out one morning in his pickup truck to do some hunting. He went into a clearing and got out of the truck with his rifle. He was going to go elk hunting, and he could see them off, on the outline of kind of the forest or the wooded area. He picked up his gun and walked a short distance through the grassy knoll there with his truck behind him to go hunting the elk. He raised his rifle and pulled the trigger, and at that point, something very strange happened. He said that there was dead silence. The bullet came out in slow motion, and instead of penetrating the animal, it seemed to have actually hit some force field. Later on, the sheriff and the sheriff's deputy came out there, and they picked up the bullet casing. It was twisted inside out. We had the photograph of that, and we put it in the magazine. It is as if the bullet had hit some concrete wall and had twisted itself.
We have Tim Beckley with Gene and Chris. You're in
the Paracast.
Independently leading the way for the nation. Compelling talk for every political persuasion. We are GCN.
Graphic Converter is the image manipulation tool for the rest of us. It does not use any database. You get full control of all your files. Want to view the images of a folder? Drag it into Graphic Converter, and a powerful browser opens up to show your image files. You could use it for slideshows. You could use it to import images from digital cameras or from scanners. Need to do some image editing? You can do that too in Graphic Converter. Also print catalogs. Convert from so many formats I can't even list them. Download now to see if Graphic Converter is good for you, like 1.5 million other users. Guess what? You could save money when you buy Graphic Converter. Use the coupon code Night Owl. Use the coupon code Night Owl to get a special price for Graphic Converter. Go to lemkesoft.com. That's LEMKE soft.com. lemkesoft.com. LEMKE soft.com.
It's absolutely heartbreaking. All over America, people are suffering from issues related to angina pain, high blood pressure, congestive heart failure, irregular heartbeat, clogged arteries, and high cholesterol. Can you live your life free from sickness, pain, and fear, and experience your body healing itself? Look to Heart and Body Extract, an all-natural supplement that aids ailing bodies. It has an exclusive formula of wild-crafted and organic herbs. End the pain without all the side effects of prescription drugs. People 20 years younger will envy your vitality. Want a happier, healthier you? Then go to heartandbody.com or call toll-free 866-295-5305 for free information. Heart and Body Extract offers a lifetime guarantee with no price increase in over 14 years. What are you waiting for? Call Heart and Body now at 866-295-5305 for your free information. Go to heartandbody.com, 866-295-5305. Distributor inquiries welcome.
Are you suffering from EP? The symptoms include fraudulent charges to your credit card. Your subway card says it's empty, but you bought it yesterday. Someone's been in your hotel room, but the desk clerk says they only show you entering the room. These are signs of EP, electronic pickpocketing. Payment cards, transit cards, even hotel room keys use a radio chip, so you can just wave your card at the register, the turnstile, or your hotel room door. But what's convenient for you is also convenient for thieves, waving scanners to electronically pickpocket you without even touching you. The good news is there's a cure. ID Stronghold has created leather wallets and clutches that have built-in EP protection. Layers of shielding material cleverly concealed in a beautiful leather wallet that stops the symptoms of EP. Go to idstronghold.com now and get the cure. idstronghold.com. Warning, ID Stronghold wallets could lead to feelings of safety and security, comfort in crowds, and euphoria. If you experience these emotions, immediately inform your friends and family about idstronghold.com so they can feel better too.
The IRS is a private corporation, not a government agency. Income tax is collected by voluntary compliance. To learn to unvolunteer or discontinue volunteering into the IRS, visit escapeharassment.com and immediately implement Strategy 1. The process must be repeated each and every time. Paper, letter, envelope, presentment, etc. Always and forever. Failure equates to acceptance, subsequent resultant contract, and you pay or go to jail by your own consent and agreement contract. Avoid recontracting. Visit escapeharassment.com and implement Strategy 1 immediately. Bar lawyers and accountants won't help you. Why wait? Get Strategy 1 and immediately implement it to divorce the IRS today and forever. That's escapeharassment.com Strategy 1 to be free from the IRS. Escapeharassment.com.
Hello, this is John Burroughs, one of the witnesses to the Rendlesham UFO incident. You're listening to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio.
So as we enter that segment, Tim is talking about this particular case he wanted us to consider further. Tim Beckley, go ahead.
Okay, so Carl Higdon tries to shoot at the elk. The bullet seems to hit some force field. It twists itself inside out, and he sees off in the distance a cube-shaped object, maybe 8 feet by 8 feet, 10 feet by 10 feet, but relatively small. Standing on the outskirts or nearby the object is a humanoid being of some sort. There's a drawing that he did that's in the magazines. The thing that was very peculiar about the being, it was kind of short in stature, if I remember correctly, and he had hair like straw, almost like a punk rocker would have, but this was before the days of punk rock. The next thing Carl Higdon finds, he is inside this cube, but there is a difference between the object that he saw from the outside and from being inside, because the object has grown from, let's say, 8 feet by 8 feet to huge inside. In fact, several of the elk he had been hunting, or we assume it's the same elk that he would have been hunting, are inside the cube, which has grown in size, inside cages. Eventually, the object takes off, and he finds himself in some other place, some other world. He's taken up an escalator or an elevator of some sort. He's put on a device which seems to scan his body. He's able to look out of this thing that he kind of described as kind of like the Space Needle in Seattle. He sees people on motorized stairs, like down on the sidewalk, moving along. Some of them are these alien beings, and some of them look like they're humans. Anyway, he eventually gets back. They take him back into the craft. They take him back to the approximate spot where he was teleported inside their vehicle, except that he now finds himself in a wooded area that is very swampy, and the truck has moved, and he cannot get it out because it is stuck in the muck and the mire. Well, he manages to call the sheriff or the police department on his walkie-talkie or his radio in his car. They come, and they have to get several tow trucks to put down logs to get his vehicle out of this spot where it had apparently been moved to. In fact, I believe when he said he was coming down, they showed him that they were going to pick up the truck and move it. Why they would want to do that, I don't know. he should send them his his towing bill, I would assume. But maybe this was evidence that something had happened. Anyway, they took him to the hospital to examine him. He was kind of hysterical. His face was all red, as if he had been out in the sun all day or something like that. And they took X-rays of him, and they found that a scar mark on his lung had disappeared, and there were other medical things too that had been eradicated after this contact and being taken to wherever he was taken. So yes, some of these experiences are legitimate. I don't know how many. I can't tell you how many people who claim to have abduction experiences actually have them, but there is something afoot here. Now, I don't know as if they're being taken to other worlds. That seems a little far-fetched. In the old days, they were taken to Magonia or to Fairy Kingdom, and some of those reports are quite similar. We have a book out on UFOs and time travel in the Fairy Kingdom, and we report a lot of these incidences that happened several hundred years ago, and there is a remarked similarity between abduction experiences. So, yes, something strange is happening in the neighborhood, but again, you can't really put your finger on it. You know, you can investigate these things, and what do you really have to go on is the honesty and sincerity of the person who is telling you the story. So this gets back to Peter Robbins, because when Peter Robbins was a teenager, he was with his sister, the late punk rock singer Helen Wheels, and they were outside in Long Island, and they saw this cigar-shaped craft. I believe it was a cigar-shaped craft, and they watched it for several minutes, and Helen apparently had an abduction experience where she was taken inside the vehicle. In fact, you can find that story in the book that we just published, Shirley MacLaine Meets the Palladians. Do I believe Peter Robbins? Absolutely. Helen Robbins told me the story, which we have in the book. Do I believe her? Yes, I believe her. In fact, Gene, she was, of course, Jewish, and she has a tattoo of an alien. She's deceased now, of course, but she has a tattoo. And you know, they had to cremate her, and they couldn't put her in a Jewish cemetery. And so, I mean, she really believes in this. There's no doubt about it. It changed her life. And so, yes, something is going on, but you can't put your finger on it, and you can't say that all these experiences are real, because why in God's name would aliens want to take us for continuous alien probes, and why would they need to examine hundreds of thousands of people? It doesn't make sense in any context, whether it's in an earthly explanation or an extraterrestrial one. Something is missing from the equation, and I don't know what it is.
What is your view, Chris?
Well, you know, again, I tend to agree and come down, you know, very close to Tim in terms of my thinking. You know, I've mentioned this on the show a couple of times, but a very interesting story was told to me by Hoyt Velarde, who was for many years in charge of the Department of Public Safety at the Hickory Apache Reservation around Dulce there. And he said that his grandfather made a very interesting comment when asked about, you know, the UFO sightings that people around there had seen, and he asked him about the abduction phenomenon, and his grandfather said that everybody is kind of missing the point. The people aren't taken out of their bedrooms to the ship forms around them, which I always thought was a very interesting sort of twist and interesting interpretation. So I think it's, as Tim I think very insightfully points out, I think it's a lot more complicated than your standard cut and dried, I think, scenario that most people attribute to the abduction phenomenon. I think it's much more complicated. There's a lot more of a psychological element, I think, than most people, I think, give credit to that particular angle. I really do. I think that there's certain people may be more prone, certain personality types, perhaps. There's got to be some underlying constant, but I think it's so varied, it's very difficult to pull that signal out from the noise.
You know, Chris, on the other hand, an astral trip or a dream does not explain how a bullet would be twisted inside out, how a truck could be teleported into a marshy area where two tow trucks would have to, No,
and that's a very well-documented case, too.
It is. Yeah, there are others, but I would say we're limited to maybe 12 or 15 that are really, really good, solid cases along that line. other people, can tell you their experiences. And again, some of them are diluted. There's no doubt about that. I mean, I've heard people just come up to me and tell me their story. And I can't prove it. I can't disprove it. All I can do is nod and say, yes, other people claim that they've had the same things happen to them. But now, when you're abducted or you have somebody, let's say, whispering in your ear, for lack of a better term, telling you to go out, and you go out at night and you take your camera with you and you point it at the sky, and all these weird objects start to form, either that you see, while you're taking the pictures or later when you develop the film, there's got to be some external, power or force or intelligence behind this. Now, my thinking after all these years is that this intelligence is not an intelligence in the way that we think of, like a person sitting at a ship panel, or dashboard, sending us down or beaming us messages into our head. I think this intelligent is something that we cannot even comprehend of, because it is not on a physical level like we think of it. It is a random intelligence that wants to be known at certain times, and I don't even think if they want to be known, they care whether it's a hoax or not. Again, the UFO field seems to kind of propel itself, and people say, if we didn't have the contactees involved in this, or we didn't have this aspect of it, the subject would be more legitimate. Well, no, it wouldn't necessarily, and I'm not sure if it would be of that much interest to people.
Let's do our break, Tim. One more segment with Tim Beckley, Mr. UFO, with Gene and Chris. You're in
the Paracast.
The nation's largest independently owned and operated talk radio network. The Genesis Communications Network. GCN.
Attack of the Rockoids has been well received by critics and readers alike. It's a thrill-a-minute story you'll never forget. A former U.S. military intelligence officer is haunted by intense dreams about a beautiful woman pleading for his help after a terrible battle in outer space. But the dreams turn out to be true and thrust him into a telepathic love affair with a woman whose faraway planet is intent on destroying the Earth. And now the gripping tale continues in The Coming of the Protectors. It's the second book of the Rockoids trilogy, a galaxy-spanning adventure that pits our hapless heroes against powerful, fanatical enemies that threaten the lives of freedom-loving beings everywhere. Attack of the Rockoids and The Coming of the Protectors. Classic science fiction at its best, available now. For more details, visit rockoids.com. That's ROCKOIDS.com.
The IRS is a private corporation, not a government agency. Income tax is collected by voluntary compliance. To learn to unvolunteer or discontinue volunteering into the IRS, visit escapeharassment.com and immediately implement Strategy 1. The process must be repeated each and every time. Paper, letter, envelope, presentment, etc. Always and forever. Failure equates to acceptance, subsequent resultant contract, and you pay or go to jail by your own consent and agreement contract. Avoid recontracting. Visit escapeharassment.com and implement Strategy 1 immediately. Bar lawyers and accountants won't help you. Why wait? Get Strategy 1 and immediately implement it to divorce the IRS today and forever. That's escapeharassment.com, Strategy 1, to be free from the IRS. Escapeharassment.com.
We live in a complicated society. Stressful issues are always popping up. Have you ever been treated unfairly by someone? Have you ever been overcharged for a repair? Have you ever signed a contract or a document? Worried about identity theft? How many times have you been in those unique situations where you just wanted to call an attorney to find out if you're right or wrong, or what your legal rights are? But every time you think about calling an attorney, what do you think about first? That's right. Who do you call, and how much will it cost? Our friends at Legal Shield have found a solution. With a nationwide network of 6,900 attorneys who average 19 years of experience, Legal Shield's law firms take over 40,000 calls per week helping their members. For less than $20 per month, you can have access to Legal Shield on everything from the trivial to the traumatic. Let Legal Shield stand up for your rights at lsprotection.com. That's lsprotection.com. Or call 855-340-SAVE, 855-340-7283.
Results will vary from case to case.
Are you suffering from EP? The symptoms include fraudulent charges to your credit card. Your subway card says it's empty, but you bought it yesterday. Someone's been in your hotel room, but the desk clerk says they only show you entering the room. These are signs of EP. Electronic pickpocketing. Payment cards, transit cards, even hotel room keys use a radio chip, so you can just wave your card at the register, the turnstile, or your hotel room door. But what's convenient for you is also convenient for thieves, waving scanners to electronically pickpocket you without even touching you. The good news is there's a cure. ID Stronghold has created leather wallets and clutches that have built-in EP protection. Layers of shielding material cleverly concealed in a beautiful leather wallet that stops the symptoms of EP. Go to idstronghold.com now and get the cure. idstronghold.com. Warning, ID Stronghold wallets could lead to feelings of safety and security, comfort in crowds, and euphoria. If you experience these emotions, immediately inform your friends and family about idstronghold.com so they can feel better too.
This is Leslie Kane, and I'm with the Coalition for Freedom of Information, and you are listening to the Paracast.
Tim Beckley joins us for one more segment with Gene and Chris in the Paracast. Tim, let's have you continue for a moment, and then we want to get to one or more questions before we end this segment.
Well, to a large degree, Gene, and I think you have to agree with this, if UFOs were not a mystery, we wouldn't be sitting here talking about this after 50-something years and going to the National UFO Convention in Cleveland the summer and traveling 15 hours on a train to get there. Because if the UFO mystery were solved, it would be probably very mundane. Suppose there was an occasional spaceship coming here. People would, unless they were here to like do us in or to kidnap our women or something, people would just kind of shrug their shoulders and see how it would affect the stock market or something. I mean, what's the hoopla about? Unless there's some real big social impact on us here. I mean, this has been happening since the beginning of time. And will be happening long after we are just dust in the wind.
Well, that's a point well taken. I think it has to be compelling in order for people to really pay attention and notice it. So, I tend to agree with that myself. I do have a question here from one of our posters, Wade Ridsdale, who's one of our very active members at forum.theparacast.com, where you can ask questions of our guests. And he says, I've heard Tim speak on synchronicities a number of times. Synchronicities are also a favorite subject of mine. And I've tried to create my own filters so as to discern between something seemingly synchronistic, between that and a simple coincidence, or even an accident. And would like to know what your filters might be.
Well, I have a whole list of synchronicities. They now take up about 2.5 pages. Some of them are very dramatic, and some of them are not dramatic at all. They are only dramatic to me. Now, the first synchronicity that I had, and probably the most striking one, and I've told this, I think, even on the Paracast here, but to make it short, we mentioned the name Dale Reddick before. Back in the late 1960s, he invited me to speak for his UFO group in San Francisco. I had never been to San Francisco before. He was paying my way and putting me up, so of course I accepted the trip and gave a lecture. And I think there were 300 or 400 people there in an auditorium. I remember they had a little balcony and all. And he had some very nice friends, and he was married, and we hung out a little bit. And the next day on Sunday, it was time to fly back. But we had some time to kill, so we decided to have brunch. It was a Sunday afternoon. And so we picked a place at random. Now, mind you, I had never been in San Francisco before, and the place that we picked to have brunch, nobody had ever been in. We took a seat and we started chatting, and I happened to mention to Dale and the other people that were there, it was too bad that I hadn't thought in advance to call some of the people that I had known that used to live in New York and had moved to San Francisco. In particular, I mentioned the name of Alan Vaughan, who had lectured and given workshops for us when I was running the New York School of Occult Arts and Sciences. He had moved to San Francisco to edit a glossy magazine called Psychic, which was sold on newsstands at that time. That was kind of during the height of magazine sales on newsstands. Of course, it dwindled after the years, and nothing is left anymore except for fate on occasion. Anyway, 5 minutes later, the door to the restaurant we are in opens up. A gentleman walks in with a dog on a leash, approaches us, and I look at him, and I said to myself and to my friends, is that Alan Vaughn? It can't possibly be. Okay, so I motioned the guy over, and I said, aren't you Alan Vaughn? And he said, yes. Aren't you Tim? And I said, yes, I am. And I said, what are you doing here? And he said, well, I was just out walking my dog, and I wanted to come in and have a beer. He's a pretty good beer drinker. And I just picked this place at random. So he sat down, and we had a good chuckle about this. I mean, how many people live in the San Francisco area? What, 2 million or something like that, right? What's your chances of running into somebody you haven't seen in 5 years in a place you've never been in before? So we sat down, we had a little chat, we laughed about this, and I said, Alan, what are you doing these days? And he said, well, I'm working on a book on synchronicities and coincidences, and I guess I'll have to put this in the book. So sure enough, if you could find that dusty old paperback that sold for 50 or 75 cents, I think it's case number 17 in there. But I used to go down to Miami, continuing on with this. My friend Harry Levelson, who worked for Omni Magazine, had moved down there because he didn't want to be bothered anymore living in New York, and he moved down there and had no telephone. Well, every time I was in Miami, I would walk over to one particular block, and Harry lived about 4 blocks away, and I would meet him there. He didn't know that I was coming, and I would only go down there once a year. It wasn't like a weekly event or something there, and he would be there. That's just like meeting people that you haven't seen in a long time. But this even goes much further than that. About a year ago, it was Labor Day, and I was standing at the bus stop with my friend Carol, who has been my assistant for 20-something years now. We had just become senior citizens, and the bus rate is like half of what the normal price of $2.25 would be, or $2 or whatever it is. So I had prepared in advance a little cup that I carried in my pocket that had all kinds of change in it. So I went in to take out $1.25 in quarters, and I gave it to Carol to put it into the place where you feed the coins when you get on the bus, And she looked at it and she said, oh, you better not put this one in there. It won't go through the turnstile because it's a Canadian quarter, and the bus driver will get mad. You know how New York bus drivers are, and kick you off the bus and maybe even call the police. So we were sitting on the bench at the bus stop, right, the little bench there. And I said, instead of throwing the coin away, let me take the quarter and put it on the bench. Maybe somebody from Toronto will come along and see it and pick it up and be able to use it back in Canada. Okay, so we get on the bus. We go across town for maybe 6 or 7 blocks. We get off the bus to go to the seaport. There on the sidewalk in the exact same spot where the bench would have been if there was a bench at this sidewalk was a coin. I picked it up, and it was a U.S. quarter. How could I have possibly left a Canadian quarter at one bus stop and found an American quarter at the other? That's beyond chance. What is the possibility or the probability of that happening? And I figured with the rate of exchange, I made about a penny and a half on the deal.
Well, it was certainly worth the effort then.
Yes. But, this goes on and on and on. Like I say, I have over 2 pages of incidences like this, some very peculiar. I was on the Long John Nebel show one night, and I get a call the next day from a gal who works for New York Magazine. She did the back page. It was called Best Bets. It was like a list of 10 things that you could do in New York. She says, I want to do a listing of the 10 best UFO sightings in the New York, Long Island, the area. So I talked to her for about maybe 15 minutes on the phone. I told her, let me send you some more materials so that you get my address into the magazine article and all. I said, where do you live? I'll send it to you. She gave me the address. I said, well, I'm 2 apartments below you. It turned out she lived on the top floor. It goes on because there's after she's deceased, there's another story that goes with that about her meeting the Dalai Lama and me running into somebody 20 years later who knew her and was on that trip. It's part of the pattern. I do believe that they are trying to communicate with us, but they cannot speak to us verbally in the normal sense, so they are doing it through symbols and patterns. That's me. Maybe I'm wrong. You could say that I'm crazy, but anyway, get my newsletter. It's free, conspiracyjournal.com. Send me an email, MrUFO8@hotmail.com, and we'll send you all kinds of stuff. You agree with it, you don't agree with it, have a good day.
As you see, we don't have to ask Tim to tell us how to contact him because he has it already rehearsed. You can find us on Twitter if you look for the Paracast, look for the Paracast on Twitter. Also on Facebook, there are 2 Paracast fan clubs. One's a group, one's a club. You can't put them together because if you do, you lose one. This is one of the oddities of Facebook. We also have a second radio show. It's called After the Paracast, which features special guests, color commentary, politically incorrect commentary, and it's available if you subscribe to the Paracast Plus. So we're giving you After the Paracast on the Paracast Plus and the ad-free version of this show, higher resolution copies, so you can hear Tim Beckley sound even better than ever. How about that? Right from his tablet computer. And you can get all that if you check out plus.theparacast.com. That's plus.theparacast.com. If you subscribe for 1 year or 5 years, you get a free copy of the ebook version of Stalking the Tricksters and Chris O'Brien. That changed the paradigm in discussions about paranormal phenomena. That's available if you subscribe to 1 year or 5 years of the Paracast Plus. Once again, go to plus.theparacast.com, plus.theparacast.com. And we haven't mentioned this, if you subscribe to our weekly Paracast newsletter, you get another book free from Chris. Yes, Secrets of the Mysterious Valley, free if you go to theparacast.com and subscribe to our weekly newsletter. Now, my old friend Tim Beckley, Mr. UFO, thank you so much for joining us on the Paracast.
My pleasure, Gene and Chris.
The Paracast, featuring Gene Steinberg and Christopher O'Brien, is a copyrighted presentation of Making the Impossible, Incorporated. Tune in next week for a new adventure in The Paracast.